Chapter 4869. She remembered what Yi Jian said. After she climbed up, she would descend at the fastest speed. She was the fastest female soldier among the first 19 female soldiers. When she started to descend, everyone, including Xia Jinyuan, had their eyes lit up. She was fast and steady, and her shooting speed was also very fast. She was obviously better than the first 19 female soldiers. Yi Qian's eyes were brighter than anyone else's. She was so agile and fast. Female soldiers who had been selected were indeed different. No wonder Commander-in-Chief Xia said there would be a surprise waiting for her ahead. Of course there was a surprise. Yang Zhen, who had finished descending, knelt down on one knee to reel in the rope. Battalion Commander Tian cheered. Company Commander Zhu seemed to have just realized that his battalion commander had returned. He pretended to jump and widened his eyes. Battalion Commander, when did you come back? Why was there no sound at all? I was scared out of my wits when you suddenly spoke. Battalion Commander Tian couldn't be more fake. You were too busy. I didn't want to disturb you. Was your soul scared out of your wits? Do you want me to invite a dancing god to collect your soul? Battalion Commander, I'm a materialist. Stop spreading superstitions. If the political commissar hears you, he'll nag at you again. Battalion Commander Tian sneered. Huh, then I should thank you for your reminder. Don't mention it. You're the battalion commander. It's my duty. Company Commander Zhu chuckled. Stop pretending. Battalion Commander Tian kicked him. If you keep pretending, I'll send you back to your hometown. It's been 15 minutes and 47 seconds, Political Commissar Tang said. The battalion commander and company commander immediately stopped arguing. Yi Qian only had 21 seconds left. 21 seconds. Company Commander Zhu clenched his fists. Could it be done? Could it be done? Battalion Commander Tian and Political Commissar Tang were also watching closely. 21 seconds. Could it really be done? Even the fastest soldier in the battalion needed 38 seconds to complete the descent. If there was no shooting, it could be done in 20 seconds. Xia Jinyuan glanced at the timer, and the color in his dark eyes deepened. There were still 21 seconds left. Come on, Qing Yao, you can do it. This was the most crucial jump, and the surrounding soldiers did not dare to disturb him. Yang Zhen silently gave him a few thumbs up. The female soldiers were even more nervous. They all raised their heads and stared at their instructor. Yi Qian fastened the safety lock, took a deep breath, and kicked off with her slender and straight legs. Below her, there was only a dumbfounded look and an endless stream of F***, 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 F***. He held a loaded pistol in one hand and pulled the rope with the other. His speed was like a free fall. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. He then opened fire. When she was descending, he could only see her shadow. Only when she stopped and fired would he be able to see her real body. There were a total of 4 shots. Based on the 3 seconds shooting time, it would take 12 seconds. Including the descending time, no matter what, it would take more than 20 seconds. Everyone was worried about Yi Qian's fast speed and worried that she would fall directly. Only Xia Jinyuan's handsome face was calm. There was even a faint smile on his thin lips. They were worried that Yi Qian would fall because she was too eager to succeed. In Xia Jinyuan's eyes, he saw his comrade Qing Niao's fearless figure. She could do it. He always knew that she could do it. With unlimited potential, she could definitely do it. Swoosh! Yi Qian's shadow fell rapidly until it suddenly stopped. Her figure finally materialized. She landed firmly on the ground and handsomely retracted her pistol. Then, she knelt on one knee and closed the rope. Xia Jinyuan and Political Commissar Tang pressed the stopwatch at the same time. The female soldiers took 16 minutes and 7 seconds. Chapter 4870. It was so quiet that Yi Qian, who was about to get up and leave, froze in place. He glanced at the silent soldiers who were staring at him, then looked at Xia Jinyuan, who had been standing in place. He blinked. It was so quiet that it was scary. She needed Captain Xia's help. Xia Jinyuan looked over with a smile. This time, he didn't speak immediately. He just looked over with a smile, and his eyes were full of pride. He was proud of her wonderful performance. The dusty pearl had begun to bloom. The hardships along the way had turned into achievements that could make her shine. After putting in so much effort, it was finally time for her to bloom. He always knew that his girl would shine. Now, wherever she was, there would be a legend. I'm proud of you. Xia Jinyuan's thin lips moved slightly across the crowd. Yi Qian didn't hear his voice, but he understood from his lips. His eyes curved into a smile, like a bright new moon that had parted the clouds. The smile in Xia Jinyuan's eyes deepened. The two of them interacted silently. On the other side, Political Commissar Tang stared at the stopwatch with his eyes wide open. He shook the stopwatch in his hand in disbelief. This thing isn't broken, right? 16 minutes and 7 seconds. The female soldier took a total of 16 minutes and 7 seconds. 2 seconds faster than the male soldier. When did Yi Qian jump? 15 minutes and 51 seconds. In other words, she took a total of 16 seconds to shoot from high altitude. 16 seconds to shoot from high altitude and land from high altitude. How is that possible? The excited battalion commander Tian didn't notice Political Commissar Tang's strange behavior. He couldn't wait to ask, how was it? Did she win or lose? How long did she take? Did you remember? He asked a series of questions, then realized that Political Commissar Tang didn't hear him at all. He was holding the stopwatch in a daze, like a wooden man. What's wrong? Battalion Commander Tian couldn't hide his excitement. He reached out and took the stopwatch. Political Commissar Tang came back to his senses and handed the stopwatch over. The stopwatch showed 16 minutes and 7 seconds. Battalion Commander Tian stared at it for a few seconds, then slowly asked the Political Commissar, the female soldier won. The male soldier lost. At this time, there was no need to confirm that the female soldier had won. Yes, the female soldier won. Instructor Yi used all his strength to stop the tide and used 16 seconds to complete the aerial shooting and landing. My battalion's soldiers were the fastest. 38 seconds. Political Commissar Tang was so shocked that he had to swallow his saliva before opening his mouth. Completed in 16 seconds. Old Tian, you and I didn't see wrongly. He was a full 22 seconds faster than the soldiers in my battalion. It's more than double. Battalion Commander Tian's eyes widened in disbelief. Who else is keeping track of time? Show me the stopwatch. He knew that she was fast. He could tell from the speed of her descent that she was fast. He could not believe that she was so fast. Yes, the new instructor, Captain Xia. He has a timer, and Zhu Zhonghua is beside him. Political Commissar Tang did not believe it either. He simply strode forward with Battalion Commander Tian. When Company Commander Zhu heard the number that Xia Jinyuan whispered to him, he exclaimed in shock, "What?" Then his eyes widened as he took the stopwatch from Xia Jinyuan's hand. When he looked at it, his hands trembled. It's really 16 minutes and 7 seconds, 2 seconds faster than the male soldiers. The first 18 female soldiers completed the aerial shooting and landed. It was obvious that there was not enough time. In the end, the first lieutenant from the Army's paratroopers appeared and shortened the time. Then, Instructor Yi appeared, and it was even more amazing. She turned the male soldier situation from a sure win to a loss. Company Commander Zhu, whose eyes were wide open, asked in a low voice, "Brother, is the watch broken?" Chapter 48-71. 16 minutes and 7 seconds. She beat the male soldiers by 2 seconds. She turned the male soldiers' victory into a loss. Company Commander Zhu really couldn't accept it for a while. It's not bad, I'm sure. Xia Jinyuan smiled. The applause is enough to show how outstanding she is. Thunderous applause sounded. The soldiers who lost and the onlookers were all applauding the female soldier's performance. Xia Jinyuan continued to attack Company Commander Zhu. Instructor Yi took 16 seconds, the shortest among all the soldiers. Also, I'm sure her shooting accuracy is 100%. Company Commander Zhu's strong body swayed, and his blood pressure soared. The fastest time my battalion took to finish shooting was 38 seconds. So? Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows and didn't say anything. So? Company Commander Zhu, who was still staring, raised his hand and slapped his forehead. My brain must have been damaged today. As he spoke, he suddenly saw Political Commissar Tang and Battalion Commander Tian striding over from the corner of his eyes. Company Commander Zhu gulped several times. Things were going to get out of hand. He just wanted to know the details of the female soldiers and the female military instructor, Instructor Yi, who knew that he would end up stroking the tiger's whiskers and lose face. Battalion Commander Tian's face was a little distorted. Looking at his happy and angry expression, Company Commander Zhu really wanted to run away. He was worried that he would be beaten up by the battalion commander. The female soldiers, who were still in shock, heard the applause. They came back to their senses and applauded excitedly. Instructor Yi looks young, but I didn't expect her to be so good. She could do everything and crush everyone in every class. She's amazing. She's even better than the instructors in my previous unit. The better someone is, the stricter the requirements they have for themselves. I'm happy, but at the same time, I'm prepared to suffer in the coming days. I'm not afraid. I was already prepared to suffer when I learned that I was going to be transferred to the Northwest. My old regiment commander told me that we have a high chance of becoming the first female Special Forces unit. The stricter the instructor, the better for us. We can learn real skills. Now all my worries are gone. What are you worried about? Hee, nothing. So did we win or lose? You haven't reported the time yet? I suspect that it took about the same amount of time, mainly because Yang Zhen and Instructor Yi shortened the time in the end. I didn't expect Yang Zhen to be so powerful. First Lieutenant Yang Zhen used to be a paratrooper. These subjects aren't difficult for her. A few female soldiers who were in tune with each other and had gotten to know each other after a day and a night clapped and chatted secretly. They looked at Yi Jian with bright eyes that seemed to be shining. Although the female soldier Gao Xiao was clapping her hands, she glanced at Qiu Tong from time to time. When she saw Qiu Tong clapping her hands vigorously, she sneered. She only knows how to pretend. Let's see how long she can pretend for. She didn't believe that no one in the army would be able to discover her hypocritical side. Amidst the applause, Yi Qian, who did not see Battalion Commander Tian at first glance, returned to the female troop. The female soldiers who were clapping consciously put down their hands and regrouped as quickly as possible. Training had yet to begin, but Yi Qian's abilities were enough to make them stop underestimating him and become wary of him. The first step to establishing authority was to let the subordinates know how powerful their superiors were. Only then would they be fearful. As long as the first step was successful, the following steps would be much smoother. The female soldiers stopped clapping, and so did the male soldiers. However, the result of which side won was still unknown. They were still cheering and shocked by the female soldiers' performance. Chapter 48-72. At the final critical moment, Yang Zhen's rapid descent and nimble shooting made everyone's eyes light up. On the other hand, Instructor Yi Qian's appearance shocked everyone. Yang Zhen was a paratrooper, and descending from high altitudes was one of their training exercises. Although she had never officially paratrooped before, she had a solid foundation and could complete it very well. Yi Qian, on the other hand, was different. She excelled in all the subjects. As long as she appeared, she would definitely beat everyone. Her performance was spectacular and shocking. Seeing Battalion Commander Tian and Political Commissar Tang approaching, Xia Jinyuan raised his stopwatch and prepared to announce the final result. He was the only one present who could remain calm. Battalion Commander Tian quickly asked for confirmation. How long did it take? Reporting, it took 16 minutes and 7 seconds. The female soldier wins, Company Commander Zhu answered. Although they lost, they couldn't lose to the point of being scared. They had to be confident. Political Commissar Tang nodded. That's right. How long did Instructor Yi take? Battalion Commander Tian asked again. This time, it was Xia Jinyuan's turn to answer. Reporting, it took 16 seconds. It was true. Battalion Commander Tian glared at Company Commander Zhu, then smiled at Xia Jinyuan. Announced the result, and let them know how big the gap is. Yes, sir. Facing the battalion commander, Xia Jinyuan, who was also a lieutenant colonel, did not treat himself as an equal. Instead, he placed himself in a position far lower than the battalion commander. Wherever he went, he had to follow the rules. There were rules in the military. Even if he was also a lieutenant colonel, he could not ride on the battalion commander's neck. No matter how big or small the taboo was, Xia Jinyuan would never commit himself. Although Battalion Commander Tian did not think much of it, he smiled when he saw Xia Jinyuan, who had the same rank as him and had a very proper attitude. Old Tang was a good judge of character. He was not a troublemaker. He only knew how to do things. He liked it. Xia Jinyuan raised his stopwatch and announced the result to the male soldier's anticipation. The female soldier took 16 minutes and 7 seconds. The female soldier won, while instructor Yi Qian took 16 seconds to complete the vertical shooting descent. When the result was announced, the male soldiers' expressions froze. When they heard Yi Qian's time, they were stunned again. 16 seconds. It only took 16 seconds to complete the vertical shooting descent. Xia Jinyuan smiled and asked the 20 selected male soldiers, "Did you not expect to lose?" The male soldiers' faces tightened as they lowered their heads. They lost. They actually lost? I really didn't think that I would lose. I thought that I would win, and win beautifully. Don't lower your head. It's a good thing that you lost today. Although it's embarrassing, it's a wake-up call for all of you. You'll know how to catch up in the upcoming training. Xia Jinyuan calmly accepted the outcome. The female soldiers were indeed very good, but the male soldiers were not bad. If it weren't for Yi Qian and Yang Zhen's performance at the end, they would have definitely taken more than 17 minutes. One was Yang Zhen, who specialized in paratroopers, and the other was a well-rounded female special forces soldier. It was no wonder that the male soldiers lost to the female soldiers in this subject. In addition, these female soldiers were outstanding in their original units, and the military was strict in removing those who wanted to come in and earn military merits. They only kept the female soldiers who were truly capable and did not lose to the male soldiers. It would be a joke if they lost in every subject. Xia Jinyuan knew where the problem was, so he could accept it. However, Company Commander's son found it hard to accept. He stood there expressionlessly. Although he did not say anything, his aura was terrifying. They lost again. They lost again. What face? It was all gone. Chapter 48-73. The expressions of the 3 deputy companies were not good either. The 20 male soldiers were all from the 3 companies and were the best in their respective companies. However, they were suppressed by the female soldiers. How could they maintain their dignity? Even Battalion Commander Tian would be embarrassed. Although Battalion Commander Tian was embarrassed, these female soldiers were his soldiers from the moment they entered the camp. That made him feel a little better. Moreover, losing once could make the soldiers reflect on themselves and strengthen their training in the future. Battalion Commander Tian also felt that although they lost this time, they had learned their lesson. It was more meaningful. Seeing the soldiers lower their heads, Battalion Commander Tian said in a deep voice, "Losing is not a bad thing. It will let you see your shortcomings. In the future, the female soldiers will be your role models. All the male soldiers will be included. Losing was not a bad thing, but there must be punishment." The 20 male soldiers quickly lined up. Battalion Commander Tian pointed outside the camp. "Run lightly for 5 kilometers. Company Commander lead." The company commanders included Company Commander Zhu, Company Commander Sun, and the 3 deputy companies. Since the company commanders and deputy companies were running, how could the platoon leaders and squad leaders not dare to run? Company Commander Zhu took the lead. He would rather run for 5 kilometers than stay behind to face the battalion commander's storm. After running lightly for 5 kilometers, the battalion commander's anger dissipated a little. It would be much safer for him to show his face again. The male soldiers ran lightly for 5 kilometers while Yi Qian reorganized the female soldiers and let them rest for tomorrow morning's exercise. Taking advantage of this short time, Yi Qian directly made First Lieutenant Yang Zhen the squad leader and 2 second lieutenants the deputy squad leaders. The female soldiers disbanded and left the line. Yi Qian walked over to Battalion Commander Tian, who had been watching from the side. He stood still and saluted. Reporting to Battalion Commander. Female Instructor Yi Qian reporting for duty. Battalion Commander Tian immediately returned the salute and smiled in a very familiar manner. No need to be so formal. Relax a little. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand. I'm Pioneer Battalion Commander Tian Guoji. I'll need you to take care of me in the future. As expected of his father. This was the first time they met, but he was shocked. When the shooting results came out, Battalion Commander Tian was once again shocked by the bullet holes on Yi Qian's target. He turned his head and said to Political Commissar Tang, I should have shown him the target just now. That's enough of a blow. I'll leave it for next time. Political Commissar Tang sighed and said to Yi Qian, What should I do, Xiaoyi? I want to keep you in the barracks for a long time. Xia Jinyuan's heart skipped a beat. Yi Qian smiled and said, Political Commissar, you can only think about it. Don't do anything about it. It will put me under a lot of pressure. Battalion Commander Tian and Political Commissar Tang laughed heartily. With Yi Qian's previous performance, Battalion Commander Tian valued her from the bottom of his heart. He strongly expressed that he had great expectations for this female combat team. He hoped that under Yi Qian's leadership, the first female combat team, which was still in its embryonic stage and not yet fully established, could be trained into a strong combat team. This would lay the foundation for the future female special forces. Because there is only half a year's time, the training time was quite tight. Based on the expressions of the female soldiers in today's competition, Yi Qian worked through the night to come up with a more targeted training plan. He listed out everyone's strengths and weaknesses one by one. At around 2 o'clock in the morning, Yi Qian listed out the strengths and weaknesses of the 20 female soldiers. After formulating a targeted training plan, he carried the military portable issued by the military and knocked on Xia Jinyuan's bedroom door. Xia Jinyuan, who was stretching, heard the knock on the door. His handsome face, which was illuminated by the table lamp, revealed a faint smile. He glanced at the portable military portable that was still on. Xia Jinyuan picked up the glass of water beside him and stood up. Chapter 48-74. When he opened the door, he looked down and saw Yi Qian holding a laptop in her hand. The smile in his eyes deepened. It seemed that she was doing the same work as him tonight. Yi Qian was surprised by the speed at which he opened the door. You're not asleep? Are you busy? I'm not asleep. I just came up with a training plan for the male soldiers. Xia Jinyuan turned sideways and invited her in. Yi Qian, who was wearing a short-sleeved shirt and shorts, did not notice that the man behind her was looking at her slender and straight legs. I came up with a training plan for the female soldiers. I would like you to take a look and see if there are any areas that need to be changed or if there are any areas that are inappropriate. Yi Jian, who was walking as she spoke, saw a portable phone on the desk that was still on. She smiled softly and turned her head to look at Xia Jinyuan. Are you also organizing the training of the male soldiers? Xia Jinyuan closed the door and locked it. He smiled and nodded. You only have half a year. You have to hurry. Seeing that the glass was empty and Yi Qian was only holding the laptop, Xia Jinyuan picked up the thermos in the corner and poured himself some water. Xia Jinyuan's eyes darkened a little when he saw her sitting on his single bed with the sound of water splashing. She was alone in a room in the middle of the night. His little fox was really defenseless. Next to the single bed was the desk. Yi Qian naturally chose to sit on the bed instead of the empty chair in front of the desk. If she needed to change the training plan later, she would definitely have to do it while sitting on the chair. Yi Qian thought to herself. He placed the steaming glass on the desk and pushed it in front of Yi Qian. Xia Jinyuan looked at Yi Qian tenderly. Did you encounter any difficulties or indecisiveness during the process? Did you have to change anything multiple times? He was standing, and she was sitting. Yi Qian could only look up and answer, No, I observed their performance in the afternoon, and I had a plan in mind then. When I wrote it at night, I just sorted it out a little, and I didn't make any mistakes or make any changes. The range of the photo was limited, so she could only vaguely see his face. Even so, she could still feel that his face was blurry as he stared at her. His eyes were full of love for her. Yi Qian, who had come with the intention of asking for a favor, suddenly felt uneasy. His expression was no longer as casual as before, and he even seemed to be avoiding his gaze. Why did she feel like a lamb walking into a tiger's den? As soon as the strange feeling flashed across her heart, her chin was held up by a warm and strong hand. Yi Jian, who was already a little flustered, was so frightened that her body leaned back subconsciously. She forgot that she was sitting on the bed. Leaning back like this, her whole body seemed to naturally lie down on the bed. She realized that she had made a mistake in her actions, but before she could correct it, she heard a low and pleasant laughter that contained traces of affection. "You want to lie on my bed? Are you sure?" he asked with a low chuckle. Yi Qian instantly blushed. She replied anxiously, "What do you mean by lie on your bed? You scared me." "Scared? How?" The man who was standing was still holding her chin, his thumb gently stroking it. "You came to see me in the middle of the night just to ask about the training. You don't have any other intentions." Yi Qian stammered. "What other intentions could I have? Didn't you say that I could come to you any time if I had any difficulties?" "Any time doesn't include the middle of the night. You have to know that a man's body is most relaxed in the middle of the night. Once relaxed, especially an old virgin like me, I can't help but think about love. You picked the wrong time." Chapter 4875. Old. Child. Child. The thin-skinned Yi Qian wanted to laugh. Old child? Only he could say that out loud. Yi Qian had cultivated in front of him before, so he didn't panic this time. Instead, he sighed and said, "I did pick the wrong time, but I have to say that you didn't cherish the opportunity to end your old virginity. All you could do was wait for it." He was referring to the last great opportunity to end his old virginity, which was ruined by Xia Jinyuan himself. Xia Jinyuan also thought of it. His handsome face stiffened slightly. It was rare for him to be a loss for words. After a few seconds of silence, he said, "Let bygones be bygones. There's no need to mention it again. We should cherish the present." Last time, he was completely unprepared. It wasn't that he didn't cherish it. Yi Qian relaxed at the mention of the embarrassing past. The flirtatious feeling that made them lose control of their rationality instantly disappeared when the embarrassing past was brought up again. Yi Qian pointed at the bag he brought over and raised his eyebrows. "I didn't pick the right time tonight. I'll be more careful in the future. Let's take a look at my plan first. With you in charge, I'll feel more at ease." Xia Jinyuan's heart ached. His reputation was ruined just like that. He sat back in his chair and didn't look at her bag immediately. Instead, he faced Yi Qian and said seriously, "You have to forget about that incident. Don't mention it again. I'm afraid that if you mention it too much, it will cause me to have hidden diseases, such as impotence. The consequences will be very serious. It's related to a lifetime of sexual happiness. You have to forget it. Sexual happiness, happy agreement." Yi Qian didn't realize what he meant, but she knew that she had to go along with him. She nodded seriously. "Okay, I'll remember it. For happiness, I'll definitely forget it. It's this sexual happiness." Xia Jinyuan took out a pen from the pen holder. He used a serious expression to hide the sadness in his heart. He picked up the pen and wrote the words "sexual happiness" on his notebook. Yi Qian facepalmed. Her Captain Xia was always able to talk about nonsense with a straight face. "Do you remember it?" he asked again. Yi Qian nodded solemnly. "I definitely won't." He tore the piece of paper with the words "sexual bliss" on it and threw into the trash can. Xia Jinyuan heaved a sigh of relief after receiving the assurance. He then added, "If you mention it again, you'll be punished on the bed. Let's talk about work first." The corners of Yi Qian's mouth twitched. He was afraid that the conversation would go off topic again, so he quickly changed the topic. "I promise you, I won't mention it again. If I do, you can punish me however you want." Xia Jinyuan nodded in satisfaction and looked deeply at Yi Qian. There was a smile in his dark eyes that Yi Qian did not notice. Let's talk about work first so that she won't worry about it. I don't plan to look at your training plan. You can look at mine first. He pushed his laptop in front of Yi Qian. When they talked about work, the man who was full of mischief earlier restrained his expression and said seriously, "You need to learn how to walk on your own. You can't doubt your own ability just because I don't have control over it. The training plan isn't fixed. You can adjust it at any time during future training. As long as you have a good understanding of each soldier's strengths and weaknesses, you can definitely improve the overall level through targeted training. You don't have to feel too much pressure. Just do your best." Yi Qian humbly listened to his advice. In front of him, she was a complete newbie. Every word he said was very useful to her. None of it was nonsense. Chapter 4876. Xia Jinyuan's deep voice came from the room. "I can guide you to avoid detours, but I won't interfere with your matters. Sometimes, even if I find a problem, I won't point it out. Growing up too smoothly won't allow one to improve. I hope that you can accept the training and have your own style of leading soldiers. You don't have to copy my style from time to time. Take a look at my plan first. After reading it, we can talk about what you need to improve." As a boyfriend, Xia Jinyuan would never spoil Yi Qian regardless of the occasion, let alone treat Yi Qian like a canary in a cage. He would take Yi Qian with him and forge ahead with him. He would never use his powerful wings to protect Yi Qian on the military path of the special forces. He only hoped that Yi Qian could ride the wind and break through the waves, soar into the sky like an eagle, and live a wonderful life that belonged solely to her. Yi Qian looked at it very seriously. She wasn't angry at Xia Jinyuan for not helping her. Xia Jinyuan, who didn't participate, picked up a book on military theory and read it while accompanying Yi Qian. One of them bent over the table and carefully revised it, while the other quietly accompanied her without disturbing her. Although they didn't communicate, there was a warmth that no one could disturb. An hour later, Yi Qian looked up from her laptop. She twisted her stiff neck from leaning over the table for a long time and looked up at the man who had been accompanying her. She didn't know when he started reading, but he raised his slender legs and placed them on the other side of the table. He leaned his head against the back of the chair and covered his face with the book in his hand, only revealing his handsome chin that was illuminated by the light. He was indeed tired today, even more tired than she was. During the day, after chatting with Battalion Commander Tian, she went back to the dormitory to rest for a while, but he was busy until 9 at night before returning to the dormitory. He didn't rest and rushed to finish the training plan for the 20 male soldiers. When he finally finished, she came looking for him. He had been accompanying her until now and hadn't said a word of tiredness. Looking at Xia Jinyuan, who had fallen asleep, Yi Qian's gaze became increasingly gentle. Because it was rare for the two of them to be alone in a room, Yi Qian, who was warmed by his company, got up and couldn't help but reach out to gently and slowly remove the book that covered his handsome face. When the book was removed, she would sometimes see the dazed, handsome face completely covered by the light. His eyebrows, narrow eyes, his nose, and thin lips were so delicate that she couldn't find a single flaw. Nighttime was a time when one could easily have wild thoughts, when one's rationality would be muddled, and it was also a time when one would be tempted to commit evil. The blurriness of the night, the charm of the night, would also thin the air, make the heart beat faster, and make the blood boil. That calm, unhurried, and even cold-blooded heart during the day began to beat faster because of the long time she spent looking at the handsome face that moved her heart. His heart suddenly rippled like a spring pond that had been thrown into chaos. His handsome face was like a drug. Other than messing up Yi Qian's heart, it also made her blood flow more restlessly. The shadow that was cast on the snow-white wall slowly bent down. The two shadows got closer and closer until they overlapped. Her warm and tender lips secretly kissed Xia Jinyuan's thin lips with deep love. As soon as their lips touched, Xia Jinyuan, who was sleeping, suddenly opened his eyes. Yi Qian, who was caught doing something bad, was so shocked that he quickly sat back down on the bed. The light was too dim, but Yi Qian could see the heat in his eyes. It was so hot that it made her flustered, irritable, and confused. It was so hot that she couldn't help but look away. Chapter 48:77. It's not a dream, Xia Jinyuan spoke. His voice was a little hoarse and so deep that it made Yi Qian panic. Xia Jinyuan quickly retracted his long legs from the desk. At the same time, his arms were tightly wrapped around the waist of the person who had kissed him. Yi Qian clutched the army green bed sheets, which were so smooth that they looked like they had been ironed out. She lowered her voice and pretended to be calm as she replied, "It's getting late. Aye. I'll go back to my room and see if there's anything else to adjust. Rest early. Good night." She finished speaking in one breath without even catching her breath. "Were you stealing a kiss from me just now?" Xia Jinyuan's eyes were burning as he approached. Yi Qian instinctively wanted to get up and leave. She had been caught stealing a kiss. It was better for her to leave first. The panicked Yi Qian wanted to get away, but how could Xia Jinyuan, who had been aroused by the kiss, let her go? He quickly got up and pressed down on her shoulders with his warm palms, forcing Yi Qian to sit back down on the bed. He looked at her with his dark eyes and smiled wickedly. "It's too late. You came in and sat on my bed. I've already misunderstood your intentions. It wasn't easy for me to calm down, but you're seducing me again. Baby, I'm full of bad intentions right now, and I need you to lead me away." Yi Qian shifted uneasily. Embarrassed and flustered, she stuttered even more. I still have work to do." Her words were weak and feeble. "As for work, there's no hurry. We have time for ourselves right now. We could do other more meaningful things." "You're not in a hurry, but I am. We need to use it in the morning." Yi Qian, who had taken the initiative to seduce him, quickly pushed his hand away. She stuttered the entire time. "What more meaningful things? You can do them alone. I still have work to do." "Work?" Xia Jinyuan chuckled. She had already stolen a kiss from him. Would he let her go back to work? He didn't want to be a gentleman right now. So how could he let her go back to work? No, work was just an excuse. She wanted to leave after teasing him. He gently twirled his fingers and took a step forward with his long legs. He directly stepped on the side of the bed. It was obviously a rough action, but when he did it, one could only see the dominance of a man. Yi Qian still wants to get out of bed? That was impossible. Trapped in a space, even the tip of her nose was filled with his refreshing scent. Yi Jian began to realize that danger was approaching her at high speed. He took a deep breath and raised his hands slightly with his palms facing outwards. He faced the dangerous man in a defensive posture. "Captain Xia, calm down, calm down. Pay attention to your image. Look, it's already 2:30 in the morning. We need to get up at 5 in the morning to do exercises. We only have 2.5 hours to sleep, so I won't disturb your work. Tomorrow, let's find a quiet place, and we can talk about life in depth. Talk about life in depth." This was the most explicit thing Yi Qian had ever said. The underlying meaning was very clear. Xia Jinyuan, on the other hand, did not have any thoughts. This was a crucial time for her. She probably wouldn't even have much time to rest in the next 6 months. Talking about life in depth was not something that could be solved in a day or two. He had already thought about it. In order to make up for his many years of absence, he wouldn't be able to go out for at least 3 days and 3 nights. So, even if she had such thoughts, he still had to endure it. "We'll talk about the future in the future. Let's finish what we're doing today." The tall figure looming over her approached with an inexplicable aura. This time, he didn't lift her chin with his fingers. Instead, he held her face with both hands. Chapter 48:78. Calm down? No way. Be mindful of the consequences? Of course, he wouldn't do anything that went too far. The goat had willingly thrown herself into his mouth, and since it was the middle of the night, he would be letting himself down if he didn't do something. Xia Jinyuan, who was determined to try something new tonight, became a little excited. Blood rushed to his head, and the corners of his eyes turned slightly red. Just as Yi Qian realized that something might happen next, a loud crash that made her teeth ache was heard. The hands that were holding her face suddenly tightened. The impatient Xia Jinyuan miscalculated the height and forgot that although he was in a single bed, he was actually in a double bed. He leaned over, and before he could kiss his girlfriend's lips, His forehead first made an affectionate kiss with the solid metal bed. Bang! He didn't know if it was because his head was too strong, but the metal bed shook when he hit it. The room was very quiet. Yiqian tried to hold it in for a few seconds, but he couldn't hold it in anymore. He didn't need to be pushed down on the bed by Xia Jinyuan. He threw himself on the bed, buried his face in the bed, and laughed until his shoulders shook. Xia Jinyuan, who was seeing stars, covered his forehead with his right hand and slapped himself with his left hand. It wasn't hard, but there were only 2 people in the room. Even if it wasn't hard, Yiqian could still hear the crisp sound of self-slapping. Undoubtedly, Xia Jinyuan's self-slapping made Yiqian laugh even harder. He laughed until his body shook. Why did Captain Xia always drop the ball at crucial moments? It was the same last time, and it was the same this time. Ha ha ha. It wasn't that she didn't want to give it to him, but her Captain Xia was really unlucky. Could this be the sorrow of an old child? Xia Jinyuan hated himself so much that he wanted to kill himself. The first time, he could say that he was unfamiliar, but what about the second time? Could he still say that he was unfamiliar? Unfamiliar the first time, familiar the second time. Forget it. He just wanted to do something meaningful now. Xia Jinyuan grabbed Yiqian with his long arms and pressed his hands down. He made Yiqian lie down, and his hands were locked above his head. Yiqian stopped laughing and looked at him shyly with her dark eyes. Don't be too presumptuous. She said it in a low voice, which meant that she accepted his next actions. In fact, they couldn't do anything meaningful in the military dormitory. Touching and kissing. It was very meaningful. They couldn't be presumptuous, and both of them had to restrain themselves. They couldn't leave marks of love in case they found out. The 2 shadows on the wall kept entangling with each other, and they didn't know how much time had passed. Yiqian hugged her lover, who buried his head in her chest tightly. She closed her eyes and endured it with a dazed expression. Xia Jinyuan, who didn't dare to be too presumptuous, felt as if his whole body was on fire. After some time, Yiqian, who was hugging him, felt his body suddenly tense up. He tensed up for a while, and when she heard him let out a long sigh, his tensed body began to slowly relax. Yiqian, whose face was so red that her hands were burning, hugged him tightly and fled. When she returned to her dormitory, she quickly leaned her back against the door after closing it softly. She was like a fish swimming in water, and if one looked closely, they would see that her legs were trembling. It wasn't too presumptuous, but it had already brought her into a new world. It was the world of adults that she had experienced after experiencing 2 lifetimes. Her face was red, her heart was beating fast, and her limbs were trembling and weak. The after effects were very serious. Chapter 48-79. Yiqian leaned against the door for at least 5 minutes before she moved. She was so embarrassed that she didn't turn on the lights. This time, she really went a little overboard. From now on, there would be no privacy in front of him. She threw herself onto the bed and covered her head with the blanket. After a long time, there was a bashful sound of from under the blanket. Only when she was out of breath did she poke her head out of the blanket. However, in less than a minute, she covered her head with the blanket again. This repeated until Yiqian didn't even know what she wanted to do anymore. It had to be said that Father Fu's reminder was not unnecessary. Halfway through, Yiqian was afraid that it was the last step. Even when she was in a state of delirium, she didn't forget to remind Xia Jinyuan, who was constantly messing around with her, to stay calm. The unbearably steady Xia Jinyuan used his incomparable self-control to not take off his pants, no matter how busy his hands were on Yiqian. Yiqian's pants were also properly worn, except for her top, which was lifted. Yiqian, who was guarding the last step, poked her head out of the stuffy and hot blanket again. In the pitch-black bedroom, she widened her eyes, raised her hand, and patted her face gently. She muttered to herself, "It's hard to stay calm. In the future, I'll stop looking for Captain Xia in the middle of the night." She paused for a while, then added, "Tonight's timing is really not right. After midnight, you must never enter Captain Xia's bedroom. Remember, Remember, don't get into trouble. Yi Qian muttered a few words in detail until she yawned. Only then did she close her eyes and go to sleep. On the other side, Xia Jinyuan, who had finally eaten some stir-fried meat and was only one step away from the big stew, came out of the bathroom feeling refreshed. He was holding a pair of underwear and a pair of shorts. After drying his pants, he whistled as he returned to the room and lay down on the bed. Under the light, his jade-like handsome face was satisfied. His dark eyes were filled with the satisfaction of eating and drinking to his heart's content. After receiving his reward, Xia Jinyuan covered himself with the quilt and closed his eyes with a smile. Lying on the bed with his eyes closed, he reminisced about the feeling in his heart for at least 5 minutes. He only stopped reminiscing when he felt the urge to raise his war flag again. If he didn't stop it now, he wouldn't be able to sleep a single minute tonight. Xia Jinyuan did not dare to think about it anymore. He sat up with the quilt in his arms, looked around, and muttered to himself, "We need to add another chair. The desk also needs to be moved. It can't be near the bed. It will cause trouble if it's near the bed." He also couldn't lock the door from the inside. Locking the door would also cause trouble. In the future, if there's anything you need, you can't talk about it in the room. It's better to talk about it while walking around the camp. After he finished thinking about the details and confirmed that he could not think of anything else, he turned off the table lamp. Hugging the quilt that seemed to have Yi Qian's faint scent, he finally fell asleep. There was no need to worry about oversleeping. As long as the horns sounded in the camp, he would definitely be able to wake up immediately. The same was true for Yi Qian. Outside the window, the silver moon hung diagonally in the sky. In the Gobi Desert outside the camp, the barren hills that exposed the light brown soil were like creeping beasts. They fell asleep together with the tranquility of the night. Time ticked away. The stars in the sky began to fade, leaving only a few brightest stars as embellishments. The night was about to pass, and a new day would soon arrive. In the camp, the sentries held their steel spears tightly in their hands and watched the surroundings with eagle-like eyes until dawn when they changed shifts. At 5 o'clock, before the sky brightened, the horns sounded in the camp on time. The lights in the dark camp lit up almost at the same time, including Yi Qian's and Xia Jinyuan's rooms. Chapter 4880. The two of them had only slept for about an hour, so today's training wasn't affected by the intimacy they had in the wee hours of the morning. After daybreak, the two of them, who had stayed up all night, quickly immersed themselves in their own training. On the way to the field, the two of them even bumped into each other. Their eyes met, and they nodded politely, choosing to forget about what had happened in the wee hours of the morning. After waking up, Yi Qian didn't have the time to be embarrassed about what had happened in the wee hours of the morning. Her responsibilities were heavier than Xia Jinyuan's, and she definitely couldn't let her personal feelings affect her training. In order to reassure the military, after looking at Xia Jinyuan's training schedule last night, they made some minor adjustments to the original training schedule for female soldiers. The overall direction remained the same, but the later stages of the training would be more difficult than the male soldiers' training. The female soldiers who had returned to their respective dormitories last night to discuss their instructor finished their 3-kilometer morning run early in the morning. When they gathered, Yang Jun handed out a form to each of them. The female soldiers took the form and read the content clearly. None of them wasn't surprised. The training on the form sent chills down their spines. Yi Qian looked at the female soldiers whose expressions changed when they saw the form. She stood in front of them with a cold expression and said in a deep voice, "I will complete all the training like all of you. I will warm up in the early stages and strengthen in the later stages. I don't want to hear any complaints during the training and affect the enthusiasm of the entire class." As soon as she spoke, a cold aura rushed over. She didn't have the friendliness she had when she finished the race with them last night. This made the hearts of the female soldiers who had discussed their instructor's mild temper sink. The paper in their hands was only a few thin pages, but at this moment, it felt as if it weighed a ton. Their instructor had a mild temper, but she was definitely a very difficult instructor to talk to. She was a very principled instructor. Their mentality changed subtly again, and some fear unconsciously appeared in their eyes. Yi Qian's cold gaze swept across the faces of the female soldiers one by one. Her only experience as an instructor was when she was in the 4th year of university. Facing a group of university students, and now facing soldiers with heavy responsibilities, she naturally couldn't be as easy to talk to as she was when she was training outside of university. As an instructor, she couldn't give the female soldiers the impression that she was easy to talk to. Yi Qian took in the subtle changes on the female soldiers' faces and took in a deep breath. It was impossible for him not to feel nervous, so he could only use a cold voice to cover it up. I'm sure the original unit already knows why you're here. Although your assigned location has changed, it's just a change of location. The nature of the situation hasn't changed. Our country has yet to establish a female Special Forces team. Whether or not this Special Forces team can be established depends entirely on you. We only have half a year. After half a year, the military will assess our class. If we pass the assessment, we will be established. If we fail the assessment, we will be incorporated into the Pioneer Battalion. I've seen your resumes. You all have a common goal. Now that the military has given you a chance to achieve it, it's up to you whether you succeed or not. My training plan is the cornerstone to help you achieve your common goal. I hope you can cherish this opportunity and let the military see your results in half a year's time. Now, tell me, do you have any questions about this training? Can you accept it? After speaking in a deep voice, Yi Qian didn't wait for the female soldiers to answer and suddenly raised their names. Gao Xiao, do you have any questions? Can you accept it? Chapter 4881. When Gao Xiao was suddenly called out, the one who had the biggest reaction was not herself, but Qiu Tong, who was standing beside her. Gao Xiao, who was called out, was frowning. She lowered her head and stared at the dense black words on the paper. She felt her scalp tingle. When she was suddenly called out, she immediately looked up and stared straight at Yi Qian. After a few seconds of silence, she pursed her lips and said loudly, "Instructor, you just said that you will train with us. Is that true?" "Of course," Yi Qian replied indifferently. The coldness between his eyebrows made Gao Xiao want to shrink her neck. "I repeat, I will train with you. Every word I say is not casually mentioned. You don't have to doubt the authenticity of my words. I will do what I say. Gao Xiao, do you accept?" Gao Xiao looked at the training on the paper again. She gritted her teeth and answered, "Yes. What about you?" Yi Qian's gaze slid across Qiu Tong's face. He turned to the other female soldiers and asked, "Answer me loudly." "Yes." The clear voices of the female soldiers were raised high. They used their determination to answer Yi Qian. "Very good. Since you have accepted, then use your actions to prove it to me. This is a military order. If I find any of you slacking off during training in the future, my punishment will be even worse than the training. Remember what I said today. Every word I say is true until the end of half a year's training." Female soldiers were actually more difficult to lead than male soldiers. Female soldiers tended to think too much. Once they thought too much, their negative emotions would increase. The male soldiers, on the other hand, were different. Their minds are not so twisted. As long as the instructor could convince them, nothing would happen. Female soldiers were different. Female soldiers' emotions came and went quickly. When their emotions rose, it was very likely that it would affect other female soldiers who were training normally. Yi Qian decided to say the ugly words first so that the female soldiers would not get emotional in the future and cause headaches for Battalion Commander Tian, Political Commissar Tang, and Company Commander Zhu. The reprimanding of the female soldiers quickly reached Battalion Commander Tian's ears. Battalion Commander Tian smiled at Political Commissar Tang and said, "She has the aura, but she is still a little inexperienced. She will be able to do things better after some training. Xiao Yi is already very good. When I first came to the barracks, I wasn't as brave as her. I only got started after the old political commissar taught me for 3 months." Political Commissar Tang smiled. He was still very tolerant of Yi Qian. "You just graduated. Although your performance in school was outstanding, the military school is different from the army. As long as you don't make any mistakes, It's okay to be a little inexperienced. After a long time, it will naturally be easier to do things and deal with problems. Just wait. In less than a week, she will have all the female soldiers under her control. Battalion Commander Tion was puzzled and asked with a smile, "A week? Old Tang. Oh, Old Tang, you trust her so much. Come, tell me, how did you find out?" Gao Xiao and Xiu Tong are not on good terms with each other. But this morning, she only mentioned Gao Xiao and not Xiu Tong. Why do you think this is? Why? Battalion Commander Tion waited quietly for Political Commissar Tang to answer. Political Commissar Tang looked at him and knew he was only waiting for the answer. He sighed and said, "That is to tell Xiu Tong that she has set her sights on the both of them. No, it should be said that they are the key targets to be groomed." "I'm sorry. I still don't understand the crux of the matter. It's just a name call. Maybe Gao Zhao's name is coincidentally called. Don't you think that Gao Zhao's name is easy to remember?" Battalion Commander Tion felt Political Commissar Tang was thinking too much. Political Commissar Tang saw this and could not be bothered to explain. He knew he did not look at their resumes carefully. Chapter 4882. Why did Yi Qian single out Gao Xiao? Gao Xiao herself didn't know, but Xiu Tong did. After training at noon, Xiu Tong, whose legs were as heavy as lead, went to find Yi Qian alone. She knew that their instructor was waiting for her. In the morning, when the instructor asked all the female soldiers if they would accept her harsh training, she was actually asking her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have glanced at her face. She knew that she didn't want to be in the same unit as Gao Xiao. She even wanted to use her family's connections to see if she could leave the Northwest. Unfortunately, before she could contact her family, Instructor Yi saw through her. Yi Qian guessed that Xiu Tong would talk to her, but she didn't expect Xiu Tong to come looking for her in less than a day. She was worried that Xiu Tong really wanted to leave. With Xiu Tong's family's connections, it wasn't difficult to transfer her out of a newly formed unit that didn't have any achievements. Looking at the female soldier who had no intention of competing with Gao Xiao, Yi Qian's eyes narrowed. Being a deserter once is enough. Do you want to run away a second time? Xiu Tong sat down and smiled bitterly. Instructor Yi, I can't get over it. The reason why Xiu Tong and Gao Xiao didn't get along was because of a man who tried to two-time. Xiu Tong didn't know that the man who looked elegant was also in contact with Gao Xiao. After she agreed to his pursuit, the two had only met 4 times. On the 5th time, Gao Xiao, who was on leave, opened a bottle of mineral water and splashed it at Xiu Tong, who didn't know. Fortunately, both of them were wearing casual clothes on the day of their leave. Xiu Tong knew what happened when the water splashed on her face. Shocked and angry, she went back to the unit and applied for leave immediately. Then she left her original post and stayed away from Gao Xiao without any explanation. What was there to explain? She did date that man as a couple. Although nothing else happened, she was indeed that man's girlfriend at the time. Yi Qian wasn't good at solving personal problems, but she knew that no matter what happened, running away wasn't the way to solve it. Your escape made Gao Xiao misunderstand you even more. Your retreat made Gao Xiao believe that everything she saw was real. You deliberately took the opportunity to take revenge on her. When you were sick and hospitalized back then, she replaced you on the mission that was supposed to be carried out by you and returned with 3rd-class merit. She thought that you were jealous and purposely found her boyfriend. She still thinks so even now. I deliberately asked Gao Xiao this morning because I was worried that she would want to leave too. Gao Xiao is more emotional, so I could only calm her down first before I could calm you down. The misunderstanding between the two of you needs to be resolved. I don't think Gao Xiao will listen to your explanation now. I want to let Gao Xiao see you again through the competition of strength between the two of you. I want her to put aside the past and be able to face you calmly. When she is able to face you calmly, you will be able to overcome the hurdle in your heart. If we talk about the past again, it won't be filled with the smell of gunpowder, and we can truly untie the knot in each other's hearts. Yi Qian said seriously and sincerely suggested, Xiu Tong, if you keep running away, you'll definitely miss out on your dream. Stay for your own dreams. In order to realize his dream, It was nothing to suffer a little. No one's life would be smooth sailing. Everyone would encounter one or even more obstacles that were difficult to overcome. The hurdle in your heart has been troubling you for a year and a half. Do you still want to continue? Chapter 4883. Yi Qian could not understand why Qiu Yilan had stopped moving forward and even sacrificed her own dreams for the sake of the obstacles in her life. Qiu Yilan's life in her past life was difficult, but she did not choose to give up. No matter how difficult it was, no matter how helpless she was, she still clenched her teeth and persevered. She always believed that as long as she worked harder, perhaps everything would change. Everything would change because of her hard work. Even though she did not change much in her past life, in this life, she could still pat her chest and say that she had never thought of bowing down to Yi Ying, even though she had been through so much in her past life. The only person she had ever knelt to was Yi Zhifan. She did not even kneel to Sun Dongqing, because at that time, she had always thought that Yi Zhifan was her family, her biological uncle, her elder. She did not think that kneeling to an elder was breaking her backbone. It was so difficult that she did not even know if she would be able to see the sun rise tomorrow. She had always clenched her teeth and tried to collect evidence of Yi Zhifan's crimes. But before she died, she did not get to see the day when Yi Zhifan fell from power. The regrets from her past life were finally realized in this life. She had finally achieved her goal of persevering for 2 lifetimes. From now on, she drew a line between her past life and this life. Yi Qian, who had always persevered, could not understand why Qiu Tong had given up on her dreams so easily. Compared to her dreams, what was the deepest hurdle in her heart? Yi Qian believed that the reason Qiu Tong could not overcome the hurdle in her heart had a lot to do with her upbringing. She came from a strict and upright family, so she believed that she had committed an unforgivable sin. Even if it was unintentional, she could not forgive herself. Qiu Tong was a female soldier with great potential. It was not impossible for her to become a special forces soldier. Besides, Qiu Tong, who had graduated from high school and joined the military, was 1 year younger than Yi Qian. The reason she had been deceived back then was probably because she was young and protected by her family. That was why she was careless and cajoled by a man. Therefore, Yi Qian really did not think that Qiu Tong had done anything wrong in this matter. Sometimes, it was really easy for an elegant man who worked in the business world to coax a young girl who lived in a simple environment and had no experience in love. Qiu Tong wasn't wrong, and neither was Gao Xiao. What was wrong was that Qiu Tong couldn't face him and Gao Xiao back then. She didn't explain anything and left in a panic, which led to the stalemate. Even after a year and a half, even though Gao Xiao didn't get together with that liar who cheated on their feelings, Gao Xiao still couldn't calm down. Qiu Tong, who was standing in front of Yi Qian, lowered her head and pursed her lips without saying a word. She was a stubborn girl. It could be seen from the fact that she had insisted on joining the army after graduating from high school instead of going to university. It was very difficult for others to change her decision. Stubbornness was both a strength and a weakness. Seeing her remain silent and refuse to communicate, Yi Qian felt a headache coming on. Yi Qian thought about what Captain Xia had said. He thought about how he had faced a male soldier who was so stubborn that he had no idea where to start. In the end, he managed to convince him through communication. He took a light breath and said, "Qiu Tong, you're now taking an important step to realize your dream. If you give up because of a misunderstanding that can be explained clearly, I will look down on you. I don't want to talk about what you have to do for your family. I just want to say that for your own sake, you have to persevere and face it." Qiu Tong's fingers moved slightly, and her pursed lips tightened a little. Chapter 4884. Qiu Tong had been suppressing her emotions all this time. She had also been suppressing the torment that she was unable to overcome in her heart. Yes, other than the humiliation, there was also the torment of morality. She had never thought that one day she would become a shameless intruder. It was a humiliation that she could never forget. But Instructor Yu was right about one thing. When her dream met with obstacles, how could she give up on her dream because of obstacles? Misunderstanding. Would Gao Xiao be able to accept such a shameful misunderstanding? Xiao Tong was a little confused. She didn't know how to explain it to Gao Xiao. It was the truth, and she had seen it. Facts spoke louder than words. Would Gao Xiao be able to accept it? After listening to Yi Qian's advice, Xiao Tong's expression softened a little. Yi Qian, who had been carefully observing her and didn't miss her every move, was instantly delighted. The stubborn Xiao Tong was even more difficult to deal with than Gao Xiao. Although she was prepared for her to take the initiative and had even thought of what to say to persuade her, she was still a little nervous. No wonder G3 didn't want to be the deputy political commissar at all. She didn't want that either. It was better to be led by Captain Xia. If there were missions, they would carry them out. If there weren't any missions, they would train well. How relaxing would that be? On the first day of accepting the female soldier class, Instructor Yi was already a little afraid of officers. Fortunately, Xiao Tong had softened a little. It proved that he was right. Yi Qian was happy and continued, half a year. It's very likely that you only have half a year to realize your dream. This time, if you continue to waste your time on meaningless matters, I can tell you with certainty that the day you leave the Vanguard camp, your dream will forever remain a dream. You will never be able to realize it in your lifetime. I'll record everything you've done in the past 6 months. I'll include everything you've done in the report, including your decision to give up. Then, I'll report everything to the military. From now on, your personal file will be recorded. It's impossible for you to use your family's connections like before. No matter how strong your family's connections are, they can't be stronger than the military's leaders. Think carefully. It's up to you to continue or give up. Yi Qian had already said everything that needed to be said. The rest was up to Xiao Tong to decide. The room was very, very quiet. Only the sound of their breathing could be heard. Xiao Tong, who was silent, lowered her head for a long time. There was not even any change in her expression on her face. Only the eyes that were covered by the eyelids were surging with undercurrents. Was it worth it to give up his dream for a misunderstanding? Was it worth it? Xiao Tong, who had never spoken, was not as cold as she appeared to be. She asked herself again and again in her heart, asking again and again until her stubbornness of not wanting to communicate with her family and friends finally wavered a little. She had been deceived by a man and had even interfered in the relationship of a comrade. This was the most shameful thing she had ever experienced in her 20-year-old life. If what Instructor Yi said was true, the misunderstanding could be explained, and the shame could be washed away. Xiao Tong slowly raised her head, and her tightly pursed lips finally loosened. Instructor Yi, don't you think I'm very shameful? Her words made Yi Qian feel relieved. He vaguely caught Xiao Tong's worries and what she was thinking. Xiao Tong cared a lot about other people's opinions. That was why she asked him if he thought she was shameful. Chapter 4885. For her to ask such a question, it was clear that Xiao Tong desperately needed to be acknowledged. She desperately needed someone to help her and tell her that she wasn't shameful. The key to making Xiao Tong let go of her stubbornness and refusal to communicate with others was to tell Xiao Tong that everything was just a misunderstanding. As an instructor, she believed in her. Yi Qian, who had already grasped Xiao Tong's thoughts, answered seriously. If there was a problem with your character, the military wouldn't have agreed to your application. The military would have investigated the misunderstanding between you and Gao Xiao thoroughly. You joining the military is also an opportunity for you. Like the moon shining through the fog, a ray of light flashed across Xiao Tong's gray eyes. They believed in her character and believed that she didn't do it on purpose. The military believed in her, and even Instructor Yi believed in her. On the contrary, it was her family. Every time something happened, her parents would first ask her to reflect on herself and find her mistakes. As time went by, she had developed the habit of subconsciously thinking that everything was her fault whenever something happened. When Gao Xiao splashed water on her face, she knew she was wrong. That was why she had been carefully avoiding Gao Xiao and the female soldiers in the class. She was afraid that in a new environment, that shameful thing would be exposed because of Gao Zhao's arrival. Now, Instructor Yi told her that the military approved her application because they believed in her, and she believed in them too. Qiu Tong, who had been stubborn all this time, slowly clenched her fists. Her eyes stung. Thank you, Instructor Yi. Thank you so much. Qiu Tong, whose eyes were already watery, straightened her back and saluted to express her gratitude. At this moment, she really felt that even her shoulders were much lighter. Nodding heavily, Qiu Tong, whose eyes were bright, said seriously, I know what I should do, but please give me a few days. I need to give myself some courage before I can face Gao Xiao. Don't worry. As long as the military believes in me, I won't give up on myself. After all, this was a hurdle that she hadn't gotten out of for a year and a half. Even if Qiu Tong heard Yi Qian's words and remembered them in her heart, she couldn't do it immediately. She still had to think about it carefully. Yi Qian didn't ask her to face Gao Xiao immediately. Qiu Tong's attitude already made her very happy. Yi Qian thought that he would have to spend at least a week to half a month with Qiu Tong, but in the end, it was settled in less than half an hour. Even though Yi Qian was usually calm, he couldn't help but feel a little happy. After Qiu Tong left, Yi Qian leaned back in his chair and laughed from time to time. Everything was difficult at the beginning. Yes, she had made a good start. It was a sign that the next one would be even better. Yi Qian was so happy that he did not notice that a slender figure had been standing at the door for a long time. Xia Jinyuan stood at the door for a long time after Qiu Tong left. When Qiu Tong came out and bumped into him, she even called out, Instructor. Looking at Yi Qian's silly yet adorable behavior, the smile in Xia Jinyuan's eyes was like rippling water, gently spreading and full of tenderness. It seemed that his girl had already settled Qiu Tong. Otherwise, she wouldn't be secretly happy alone. Seeing that he had not been discovered, Xia Jinyuan coughed softly. Yi Qian, who had his back to the door, jumped up in shock, looking a little embarrassed. What are you laughing about? Xia Jinyuan asked knowingly as he strode in with his long legs. Could it be that you were very satisfied with the training this morning? It has nothing to do with the training. Yi Qian's eyes curved into crescents as he smiled. I just solved a difficult problem, so I'm happy. Yes, he could tell that she was very happy, and not just happy. Chapter 4886. This time, Xia Jinyuan did not close the door when he came in. He leaned against the desk and purposely kept a distance. Even if someone suddenly came in, they would not be able to tell that there was something fishy going on between them. Xia Jinyuan smiled and asked Qiu Tong. Yi Qian did not answer immediately. She looked at him suspiciously and frowned. Did you stand at the door for a while, just now? Xia Jinyuan smiled. Yes, for a while. No wonder you hit the nail on the head. Yi Qian sighed. I wanted to hide it from you first and give you a surprise later. In the end, you found out the moment she left. I didn't feel any sense of accomplishment. Xia Jinyuan could not help but laugh at her pitiful look. When his little fox was cute, he really wanted to hug her and give her a few kisses. I'm sorry. Next time, I'll pretend I didn't know. That's not good either. How can you pretend you didn't know? Didn't you come here to keep an eye on me? If you pretend you didn't know, I can still tell. You're in charge of training, and I'm in charge of supervising. I have no choice but to obey my boss's orders. Xia Jinyuan sighed along with her. He looked like he was in a difficult position. Military orders cannot be disobeyed. I can't hide it even if I wanted to. Yi Qian saw that he was acting in front of her again. She was both amused and annoyed. You're talking glibly again. What do you want from me? If there's nothing else, I won't keep you. Take a nap and continue training in the afternoon. Wow, he's already learned how to chase people away. Being an instructor and having a military rank is indeed different. He's much more confident. Xia Jinyuan quickly flicked her forehead with his slender fingers. You little heartless girl. You needed me last night and came to harass me in the middle of the night. Now that you don't need me anymore, you kick me away. You have two different attitudes in front of me and behind me. How disappointing. He even patted his chest and emphasized to Yi Qian how disappointed his heart was. Yi Qian's gaze turned even colder. Are you okay? Captain Xia, Please step aside. Thank you. Now that Xiao Tong's matter had been resolved, Yi Qian's tone became lighter. Xia Jinyuan was overjoyed when he saw this. No one wanted more than him to see Yi Qian leading the team and training smoothly as soon as possible. Since yesterday, he had begun to lay down the foundation for her future training, and now it seemed that his efforts had paid off. Yes, but I'm not the one looking for you. My boss called and wants to talk to you tonight. At the mention of boss, Major General Yang, Yi Qian's face changed like a character in a Sichuan opera. His expression became extremely serious. What's the exact time? Any time after 8 o'clock is fine. I guess he wants to ask if you're used to it, and if you have any difficulties. If you have any difficulties, you can tell me, but don't expect the boss to give you advice. Relying on yourself is the most reliable, more reliable than relying on me. Xia Jinyuan said the last sentence very slowly. Of course, he had to say it properly. Yi Qian agreed very much. However, she still had to say a few words. Just as she was about to speak, Xia Jinyuan seemed to have guessed what she was going to say and spoke first. More reliable than relying on me. It's only limited to the military, not limited to daily life. She almost made a big mistake. Fortunately, she discovered it in time and remedied it. Yi Qian wanted to say something. Xia Jinyuan could guess what Yi Qian wanted to say based on his eagerness to explain. Relying on herself was the most reliable, more reliable than relying on her boyfriend. In that case, she would not rely on him in the future. She wanted to say that she was intercepted again. Xia Jinyuan saw her regretful expression and secretly rejoiced. Chapter 4887. Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who had escaped death, immediately reflected on himself and came to the conclusion that men should never talk nonsense. The consequences of talking nonsense would be very, very serious. It had to be said that Lieutenant Colonel Xia gained more and more experience in the pursuit of his wife. Later on, he even pretended to be experienced and taught the younger generation how to pursue their wives. He even succeeded. For this, he was proud of himself in front of Yi Qian for a long time. When Yi Qian saw that he reacted so quickly, she felt it was a pity and threw the topic aside. She wasn't an unreasonable person who insisted on harping on other people's mistakes. As long as it wasn't a big mistake, Yi Qian would basically leave it at that and not take it to heart. After chatting, Xiao Tong talked about Gao Xiao. When Gao Xiao was mentioned, Yi Qian was much more relaxed. Gao Xiao was much easier to deal with than Xiao Tong. However, she immediately took the bait once she was provoked. She even dared to ask if she, as an instructor, was really training with the female soldiers. Gao Xiao was upright and hated evil. If she was in ancient times, she would definitely be a heroine. She didn't have many twists and turns at her heart. If it was one, it was one. If it was two, it was two. Xiao Tong admired her stubbornness. Therefore, she didn't want Gao Xiao to be affected by those messy misunderstandings and target the innocent Xiao Tong, who was implicated. As long as the two of them stayed in the army, and Xiao Tong had the intention to reconcile and explain, Yi Qian was relieved. You female soldiers all like to keep your words to yourself. As for us, we thought you guys really didn't care, so we didn't take it to heart. Who knew that you guys were just saying you didn't care, but your hearts were so uncomfortable. After listening to Gao Xiao and Xiao Tong's twisted thoughts, even Xia Jinyuan, who was smooth and slick, had a headache. What were they talking about? Was there anything that couldn't be said face to face? Was there any misunderstanding that couldn't be explained face to face? Why did they have to make things difficult for each other? After Xia Jinyuan finished lamenting, he glanced at Yi Qian, who was staring at him with a half-smile. Suddenly, Xia Jinyuan shuddered and wanted to slap himself. I'm talking nonsense again. I'm being blind. And I'm talking nonsense again. It's a good thing that you're different from them. Even if you're unhappy, you can say it out loud. Like Gao Xiao and Xiao Tong, those two are really a headache. The military has the foresight to let you be their instructor. If it were us male soldiers, none of us would be able to handle them. It's not that I can't handle it. It's just that the way I handle it is different from yours. Xia Jinyuan once again unleashed his little universe to make up for his mistake. Could it be that he was so infuriated by the 20 soldiers that even his IQ dropped? Otherwise, why would he keep making mistakes? Don't spout nonsense again. Xia Zhongxiao, who was ringing the alarm for himself, collected his thoughts, his handsome face solemn and cold as he said in a low voice, "If I were to be the one handling the relationship between the two of them, I'd directly have them explain it to each other face to face. Don't let yourself get angry. If you have the time to find fault with others, you might as well focus on the righteous path." After he finished speaking, Xia Jinyuan's dark eyes flashed with an inexplicable darkness. He fixed his gaze on Yi Qian, who still had a smile on his face, and slowly said, "Although your way of handling it is effective, it takes too long to see results. I suggest you use my way of handling it." This was the biggest difference between men and women when it came to handling problems. Yi Qian, whose smile was slightly restrained, sighed and said, "They're different from the male soldiers. I've thought about it for a long time. I can't blindly use force. After trying it out today, Chiotong's words let me know that I've found the right way. But it also depends on the person. Some female soldiers are stubborn, so you have to be tough. For example, Gao Xiao is tough enough. If you go soft, she'll think that you're easy to bully and have no real ability." Chapter 4888. Ever since Yi Qian received the roster of female soldiers and looked at their resumes, Yi Qian had been looking for ways to make these female soldiers submit to him as soon as possible. This was a difficulty that a commander had to overcome, and she was no exception. Yi Qian's sigh made Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who was trying his best to keep a serious face, smile. His thin lips curved up like a cool breeze, and he looked very elegant. "You're improving very quickly. The Major General will be very happy when he hears about it. Female soldiers are indeed different from male soldiers. Captain Xia, it seems like I really can't ask you for advice. It's better for me to slowly figure it out myself. Although the results are slow, the method is right. The way you handled it is very good, but I don't think it's appropriate to treat female soldiers." Xia Jinyuan parachuted into the Snowfield Brigade and only found the weaknesses of the Special Forces soldiers. He then broke them one by one to let the Special Forces soldiers who disobeyed him know that although he was parachuted in, he wasn't easy to fool. Even if they were humiliated by Xia Jinyuan in public, the male soldiers would only lose face at the time. After that, they would restrain themselves and accept him wholeheartedly. His way of handling things might work on the male soldiers, but it wouldn't work on the female soldiers at all. Women were thin-skinned to begin with. If you humiliated them in public, they might not say anything on the spot, but they would secretly hate you even more. Although female soldiers were soldiers, they were still women. They were meticulous and wouldn't accept a rough way of handling things. It was easier for them to accept Yi Qian's way of handling things that took care of each other's dignity and made them feel at ease. The stubborn Xiotong liked Yi Qian's way of handling things. He seemed soft, but in fact, he had a way of handling things. Looking at his lover who wasn't moved by his advice, Xia Jinyuan's eyes moved slightly. He smiled disapprovingly and said, "You can let them get used to your way of handling things. As long as they get used to it, there's nothing wrong with it." At first, Yi Qian didn't notice anything. It wasn't until Xia Jinyuan said this that Yi Qian's heart popped out. When he looked at him again, there was more scrutiny in his eyes. Something was not right. Usually, Captain Xia would not be like this. The sharp-witted Yi Qian fixed her gaze on the man who was leaning against the desk lazily. His dark and deep eyes held a faint smile that made one feel comfortable. He had an elegance that could make one's heart race. He looked at her without blinking. When he saw her looking at him, he raised his eyebrows slightly. There was an indescribable wildness in his eyes. Beauty was great, but she could not be seduced by men at this time. Yi Jian, who was scrutinizing him, said with a faint smile, "Captain Xia, are you up to no good again? Why would I do that? I'm serious about my proposal. As long as it was effective, there was no need to be constrained by any form. Instructor Yi, don't forget that we only have half a year." He spoke normally, but in his heart, he was thinking something completely different. The little fox that he had watched grow up was becoming more and more clever. She had more and more ideas. She had a set of principles that were quite strong. It would be difficult for him to trick her. He still had to trick her. What if it worked? What if she was successfully tricked by him? Xia Jinyuan lowered his eyes slightly. The coldness in his dark eyes disappeared. If it worked, then she wouldn't have the chance to talk to him so casually like now. She would deal with him in whatever way she needed to deal with him. She would never be soft-hearted. His serious answer made Yi Qian think that he might have been overthinking and misunderstood. Even though there was still a trace of strangeness in his heart, Yi Qian could only put it aside for the time being. With a serious face, he pointed out what was wrong with Xia Jinyuan. Chapter 4889. When Xia Jinyuan saw that he was in the wrong, with a serious face, the coldness in his eyes disappeared, and the corners of his mouth slowly curled up. Captain Xia, you're wrong this time. Quick results don't mean that it will last. If you're too forceful, the results will be superficial and can be seen as suppression. You once said that we want the soldiers to be convinced. Using forceful suppression to get temporary results will only make the soldiers more resentful. After a long time, their hearts will be scattered. Although they're obedient on the surface, they'll betray us behind our backs. In the long run, we'll be confused by the illusion and think that the soldiers are truly obedient to us. If you can't reach the top, you'll end up deceiving yourself. Your method is suitable for male soldiers, but it's definitely not suitable for female soldiers. After speaking seriously, Yi Qian let out a long sigh. Sigh. I'd rather rely on myself than rely on you. Captain Xia, I have to take my lunch break. You should take a break too. It was the first time that Xia Jinyuan, who had been ordered to leave, was criticized so seriously by Yi Qian. He felt that it was very rare. The smile in his eyes was so deep that if he looked at him one more time, he would fall head first into his charm and never look back. I humbly accept Instructor Ye's criticism. Rest early. Good afternoon. Before he left, he bowed like a gentleman. His deep black eyes looked at her with a meaningful smile, and his long legs moved gracefully as he left. What else was there to be worried about? She was a smart and fearless girl. She was smarter than anyone could imagine. Although she was inexperienced, she was very good at summarizing. She wasn't afraid of hardships and was willing to work hard. It wasn't that the leaders in the military had good foresight. Yes, he had better foresight than the leaders. If he hadn't discovered this dusty pearl early on, the military wouldn't have such a talent. He had to mention it to his boss later and see if there were any rewards. For example, whether she could take a longer wedding leave or something like that. The more he thought about it, the more the smile on Lieutenant Colonel Xia's handsome face deepened. Yi Qian didn't see the smile on his face. He closed the door and lay on the bed. The strange feeling in his heart hadn't disappeared. He still felt that there was something wrong with Captain Xia just now. Forget it. I'd better rest. Captain Xia had his own way of doing things, and she had hers too. It cannot be said that Captain Xia was wrong. It could only be said that his method was not suitable for female soldiers. Just as he had said, he would rather rely on himself than rely on him. It was more reliable to rely on oneself at any time. When Grandpa Jin and Uncle Chun were still alive, they always taught him that if he wanted to stand firm in this world, he had to be independent. Only by being strong and independent could one not be destroyed, no matter how strong the wind or how heavy the rain was. It was obvious that relying on oneself was much more reliable than relying on others. The faces of his deceased relatives appeared in his mind. He thought of Uncle Jin, then thought of Principal Chun, and then thought of Principal Chen's murderer. Yi Qian closed his eyes and clutched the blanket tightly. A ruthless look flashed across his face. She would definitely find Uncle Chen's murderer and take revenge with her own hands. Definitely. Definitely. Yi Qian, who could not calm down, turned over and hugged the dark green blanket that was given to him by the platoon. He rolled around for a few more minutes before falling asleep. After leaving, Xia Jinyuan did not immediately return to the dormitory. Instead, he walked towards the office. He needed to talk to Major General Yan again and tell him that Yi Qian did not need to worry. She was very capable. It was good to have her own opinions. Xiao Jinyuan did have a problem just now. He purposely said that to see if Yi Qian would be led astray by him. It turned out that even as a boyfriend, he had underestimated Yi Qian. It was impossible for her to be led astray by him and even refute him immediately. Major General Yang could rest assured, and so could he. Chapter 4890. Major General Yang, who received the phone call, laughed out loud and said, "Good." It seemed that they were just worrying themselves. Captain Yu was no ordinary person, so there was no need to worry too much about her. There was no need at all. He could just let her go and let her develop. Xia Jinyuan immediately took the opportunity to mention a reward. Not to mention anything else, but to be able to take a longer wedding leave. Wedding leave? For a longer time? Major General Yang, who was still laughing, was so shocked by Xia Jinyuan's wedding leave that he started coughing. While he was coughing, Xia Jinyuan said leisurely, "Don't get agitated, just say something. Don't get agitated." How could he not get agitated? Major General Yang, who was coughing so hard that his face turned red, wanted to slap someone. "You're planning to get married? When did you decide this? Why isn't there any news about it? Does the commander-in-chief know? Did you say anything? After the wedding, the two of you will stay in separate places? Does Xiao Yi not plan to join your brigade?" Marriage was a big deal for anyone, but it had a bigger impact on Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian. If the two of them really planned to get married, they would face the same question Major General Yang asked. "You misunderstood." Seeing that Major General Yang had misunderstood, Xia Jinyuan had to explain further. "I don't plan to get married for the time being, but I'll remember to ask for a reward in advance." Major General Yang felt that he had jumped from a high-altitude parachute with a faulty parachute. His heart was in his throat. "Do you have nothing better to do? Wedding leave? Why don't you say you want to retire? Don't even think about it for 5 years. I didn't suggest it, but the commander-in-chief suggested it himself. If you have any objections, please talk to the commander-in-chief." "You still have the cheek to mention marriage leave? I want to transfer you back now. I don't want you to go crazy and affect Xiao Yi." Since Xiao Yi could solve the problem on her own and didn't need Xia Jinyuan's advice, Major General Yang couldn't help but narrow his eyes. In that case, he really had to consider transferring Xia Jinyuan back in advance. When Xia Jinyuan heard this, he did not want to negotiate any further. He cursed under his breath. "A bunch of old foxes." His expression and tone changed as he said in a low voice, "I have something urgent to deal with. I'll hang up first." Before he left, he added, "Major General, don't you know that it's easier to invite the devil in than to send him away?" Then he hung up the phone. Major General Yang was so angry that his face turned blue. Was it easier to invite the devil than to send him away? Huh. Hee. Ha ha ha. Sixth brother with a family, Xia. If the commander-in-chief makes a move, do you still have a chance to resist? Xia Jinyuan hung up the call with Major General Yang and called the old house in the evening. He chatted with Master Xia and old Madam Xia for a while and told them that he was with their favorite granddaughter-in-law. Old Madam was so happy that she beamed with joy. As she listened to her grandson speak, she covered the microphone and whispered to old Master Sheng, who was close to her. Sixth brother is more reliable than his father. He knows that he has to protect his wife. He's already chased her all the way to the army. Old Master Sheng wanted to hear what his grandson had to say. He was happy, but, "You go first. I'll come after you." Although he was happy, he still had to be careful. Old Master Sheng was much calmer than old Madam Xia. Old Madam Xia didn't think too much about it. It was good that her grandson was considerate. Xia Jinyuan, who had made old Madam Xia happy, wanted to marry their granddaughter-in-law as soon as possible. He also wanted to prevent Commander-in-Chief Xia, who loved to drag him down and make trouble for him from time to time, from dragging him down. Xia Jinyuan decided to make a move in advance and use old Madam Xia's power to stop Commander-in-Chief Xia from making trouble for him. Chapter 4891. Therefore, Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who was never soft-hearted when it came to tricking his father, tactfully expressed that his father would probably think of ways to transfer him away. If his marriage was delayed because of this, he asked old Madam not to worry. He and Yi Qian would definitely get married, but it might be a little later. When old Madam heard this, in order to let her favorite grandson marry a granddaughter-in-law as soon as possible, she directly decided on the phone, leave it to Grandpa and Grandma. Your father doesn't know what to do. Grandma and Grandpa will teach him. How dare he ruin her grandson's wedding? He's just asking for a beating. When it was old Master Xia's turn to speak, old Madame Zhang stood aside and reminded Xia Jinyuan to be careful of his influence. He must not lose sight of the big picture for the sake of small gains, and must not violate the rules and regulations. Xia Jinyuan kept all of these in mind. He did not dare to joke about Yi Qian's future, nor did he want to be used as a tool in the future. A week later, Commander-in-Chief Xia returned to the old mansion to visit his parents. As soon as he entered the house, old Madame Zhang swung the horsewhip that old Master Xia had used to ride horses to war and lashed it at Commander-in-Chief Xia. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who had time to come back, was shocked by old Madame Zhang's attitude. The horsewhip had been covered in dust for many years, so why was it hitting him today? He did not do anything to anger old Madame Zhang. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who had been tricked by his son, was confused and could not figure out what mistake he had made. He looked at the horsewhip again. It was so strong that it made a whooshing sound. Master Xia was so scared that he hurriedly said, "Old Madam, be careful, be careful. Don't sprain your waist." Commander-in-Chief Xia dodged left and right, unable to get close to the whip. Master Xia's face darkened, and he shouted, "Do you want your mother to sprain her waist? Stand still and let your mother whip you to calm down." Family Xia's uncle, who came in a few steps later, quietly retracted his leg and considerately pulled his wife to the side. "It's rare for Mom to be angry. Let's go later so that we don't get implicated." It was better to forget about trying to stop the fight. On the phone several times, the robust old lady said that she was a little bored and wanted to find something to do. She had no idea where she was going with her body. However, here came the hard part. Eldest aunt had long been used to the interaction between brothers in the family Xia. The old ones were like this, and the young ones were like this as well. Of course, it could only be done by their own family members. If outsiders wanted to do bad things, the brothers would work together to cut through gold. Don't just watch the show. Be careful. Mom might sprain her waist or sprain her ankle. No matter how strong an old man's body is, he can't be compared to a young man. If he's not careful, he'll be injured. Eldest aunt wasn't worried about her brother-in-law, but she was worried that old Madam would get hurt. Commander-in-Chief Xia was also worried. Seeing that the old master had spoken, the Commander-in-Chief Xia let out a long sigh and stood still, taking 3 lashes from the old Madam. Commander-in-Chief Xia, whose calves were trembling from the lashes, respectfully asked the old Madam if her anger had subsided. Then he asked the old Madam to tell him where he was wrong so that he could correct it. Who was the old Madam? She was used to all kinds of situations and had been involved in countless conspiracies. Commander-in-Chief Xia might be in a high position now, but the old Madam used to be in a high position too. Don't even think about getting information from her. She snorted twice and threw the horsewhip into the arms of Commander-in-Chief Xia, who was still wearing his military uniform and had golden tassels and golden stars on his shoulders. Her voice was old and full of authority. "If you want to hit me, then hit me. Do you still need to find a reason?" Such a strong reason made Commander-in-Chief Xia speechless. He could only accept it. However, Commander-in-Chief Xia still found out later. He was so angry that his heart ached. Chapter 4892. As the saying goes, no one knows a son better than his father. No one knows a father better than his son. Fortunately, Xia Jinyuan made the first move. Otherwise, he might have been transferred back to the army ahead of time. Commander-in-Chief Xia thought that since Yi Qian could handle the situation on his own, Xia Jinyuan, who was sent to guide him, could come back. There was no need to keep him. Killing a donkey to get rid of the millstone was just like that. Why would Xia Jinyuan come back? As the saying goes, it's easier to invite the devil in than to send him away. He was transferred to the northwest without a word. He could see Yi Qian face to face every day. This was a good thing. Now that he saw that although Yi Qian was inexperienced, he was fully qualified to be an instructor, so he wanted to transfer him back. Don't be so calculative. I won't cooperate every time. If I cooperate, I'll transfer him back. If I don't, I'll transfer him back. With old Madame Yang's persuasion, Commander-in-Chief Xia calmed down and thought about it. He even chatted with Major General Yang. Only then did he gradually stop thinking about transferring Xia Jinyuan back. Major General Yang understood why Commander-in-Chief Xia wanted to transfer Xia Jinyuan back. As a father, how could he want to trick his own son? Commander-in-Chief Xia never provided convenience for his only son, but he wouldn't really stand by and do nothing. As long as he didn't violate his principles and discipline, Commander-in-Chief Xia would silently protect his only son's growth in his own way. For example, young people were more or less impulsive. They had been together all the time. What mistakes did they make? Once their mistakes were exposed, even if Commander-in-Chief Xia wanted to protect them, countless pairs of eyes watching the Xia family would not let go of Xia Jinyuan's mistakes. I'm happy that Xiao Yi is able to take charge early on, but I'm also worried. If she's not smart enough, Old Six will put away his playful thoughts and focus on helping Xiao Yi learn as soon as possible. But Xiao Yi is very smart. She doesn't need the higher-ups to deal with the class matters. She can handle them herself. Do you think I don't know what Old Six is thinking? As soon as Xiao Yi learns, he'll be happy. I wanted to transfer him back in advance, but I was worried that he would be overjoyed and leave something to be used against him. After all, they were not in the Snowfield Brigade, where even the slightest mistake would be magnified infinitely. This was why Commander-in-Chief Xia wanted to transfer Xia Jinyuan back in advance. It wasn't that he didn't trust Xia Jinyuan, but that he was worried as a father. Even though Commander-in-Chief Xia knew that his only son had a sense of propriety and wouldn't act recklessly, he still couldn't completely relax. He would rather the two of them be separated for a short period of time than leave any hidden dangers behind. Commander-in-Chief Xia was an introverted person. He didn't like to talk about what he was thinking, and he was even more reluctant to tell Xia Jinyuan about his worries. He hid his fatherly love deep in his heart, so much so that old Madam sometimes felt that he was too cruel to Xia Jinyuan. Actually, it really wasn't. This time, if Commander-in-Chief Xia hadn't suddenly told him the real reason behind his plan, Major General Yang wouldn't have known what was going on. After a long silence, Major General Yang said, "Commander-in-Chief, sometimes it's better for you to be more direct. Even I, who's by your side every day, don't know the real reason. Old Six probably doesn't know either." No wonder old Madam was so angry that she whipped him 3 times in a row. This time, Major General Yang only said silently in his heart. Commander-in-Chief Xia took a sip of water and answered rather proudly, "No, Old Six knows." Major General Yang was puzzled. Old Six knows? How would he know? He had already complained to old Madam. If he knew, would he complain? Major General Yang was very skeptical about this. He needed Commander-in-Chief Xia to explain. Chapter 4893. Commander-in-Chief Xia's office was located in a building in the military headquarters. It looked ordinary and inconspicuous from the outside, but it was heavily guarded inside. In addition to the round-the-clock infrared surveillance, there were also countless hidden probes. It was true that there was a guard every 10 steps. At this time, it was gradually getting dark outside. All the work for the day was done, and there were no more documents to be delivered to the clerical department. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who had some personal time, drank a glass of water and moistened his throat. Commander-in-Chief Xia, who felt comfortable in his heart, opened his mouth with a smile. Why did he dare to complain to old Madam? First, he was worried that he would really be transferred back. Second, he was angry that I didn't believe him. Even the wrinkles at the corners of Chief Commander Xia's eyes were filled with comfort as he spoke with a smile. Even the retired old master can't interfere with the matters in the army. Can old Madam? The only thing old Madam can interfere with is to give me a beating and let me understand that if I don't even believe my own son, I'm only asking for a beating. After being enlightened, Major General Yang suddenly saw the light. He couldn't help but laugh. The grudges between you and Sixth Brother are really unique. Even though we've been with you for decades, we still can't see through it. They clearly knew about it, but they still wanted to set each other up. They were secretly competing with each other to the point that these old subordinates really thought that the father and son were not on good terms. They would quarrel whenever they met and set each other up behind their backs. Commander-in-Chief Xia was very reserved and didn't let his pride show completely. He cleared his throat and explained to his old subordinates. Before Sixth Brother grew up, he did think that I was a ruthless father. As for me, I didn't want to explain. I was angry that he couldn't understand me, so I just used force, especially when Sixth Brother was young and rebellious. Sometimes my temper was so bad that I scare myself. Later, Sixth Brother became more sensible and slowly learned to understand my temperament. It was only then that the tendon in his heart twisted back. It's a pity that the way we get along with each other is fixed. I'm not used to it, and Sixth Brother isn't used to it either. I dare say that if I suddenly ask about Sixth Brother's well-being one day, Sixth Brother will definitely think that I'm sick. He might even think that I don't have much time left and want to release his great fatherly love as soon as possible. Major General Yang. Such a unique father and son relationship greatly broadened Major General Yang's horizons. After he left, Major General Yang wanted to verify whether Commander-in-Chief Xia was the only one who thought this way. A month later, he contacted Xia Jinyuan again to ask about Yi Qian and pretended to casually talk about it. In order to prevent Xia Jinyuan from noticing that he was trying to test him, Major General Yang advised the father and son not to talk things out peacefully. Instead, they had to end it with violence. This would not solve the problem at all. It would only make the relationship between the father and son get thinner and thinner. Major General Yang had been trying to persuade him, and Xia Jinyuan did not suspect anything. He simply replied, "If one day the commander-in-chief suddenly shows so much concern for me, I'll think that he's sick. You don't have to think too much. The commander-in-chief and I are a little different from ordinary people. You just need to know that our relationship will not be damaged or thinned." After that, when Major General Yang saw the father and son staring at each other as if they would never talk to each other again, Major General Yang would sit next to them and watch with interest while drinking water. When Commander-in-Chief Xia found out that Xia Jinyuan's answer was as he had guessed, and that his ex-wife had been coming to the military headquarters for a few days in a row, he was not angry. He only asked the guards to send his ex-wife away politely. Yes, Madame Xiao came to stop him again. Chapter 4894. Although Madame Xiao did not show up in front of Family Xiao from time to time, she had never stopped paying attention to Xia Jinyuan. However, Family Xiao had always kept a low profile. Even if she wanted to pay attention, it was difficult for her to find out any news about Xia Jinyuan. This time, Madame Xiao learned about Xia Jinyuan from Madame Li, her close friend of many years. Madame Xiao, who had been away from the country for too long, did not have many good friends in the country. Even though she was Commander-in-Chief Xia's ex-wife, she was not the wife of any military chief. The only person she could find out about Family Xia was the Li family. Madame Li and Madame Xiao were in a relationship. Madame Xiao was also using Madame Li to find out about Family Xia and her only son, Xia Jinyuan. There were no eternal enemies, only eternal interests. Madame Xiao was not stupid. She had no one to rely on after returning to the country. She would not let herself be without a friend. Even though this friend had been true to her for decades and had once instigated her to betray her marriage, abandon her husband and son, and leave the country with her lover, Madame Xiao, who gradually understood, did not fall out with Madame Li. Because she knew herself well. She knew that even without Madame Li, with her character, she would not be able to stay in a marriage where she could not see her husband even once a year. Even if Madame Li's instigation added fuel to the fire, it was also her tacit consent to push the boat with the current. Therefore, she would not push her own responsibility onto others, and there was no need for her to fall out with her friends who had been true and false for decades. Madame Xia had always said that Madame Xiao was a very selfish person who lived for herself. It was clear that Madame Xia was sharp and saw through Madame Xiao's nature. When a person lived like Madame Xiao, who could leave or stay as she pleased, she could live a life of her own. Unfortunately, after returning to China, she suddenly remembered that she still had a son. She wanted to make up for it a little. She thought about how difficult it was to break the bloodline, so she wanted to get closer to him. However, she forgot that even though the men of the Xia family were affectionate, they would never be sloppy. They would not recognize her again just because she turned around. Xia Jinyuan wouldn't, and neither would Commander-in-Chief Xia. Madame Xiao watched her ex-husband's car drive away. She stared blankly at the car with a military license plate as it drove further and further away. Her hand tightly gripped the expensive handbag in her hand. When the car drove out of her sight, Mrs. Xiao adjusted her breathing and calmed down a little. Then, she took out her phone and called Mrs. Li. "Can you help me ask Old Li if Xia Xinhui has any meetings during this period?" When Madame Xiao spoke, Madame Li, who was waiting for news at home, knew that she didn't see Commander-in-Chief Xia again. Her face turned cold. Madame Li nodded and said, "Okay, I'll ask Old Li when he comes back. You, don't be too anxious. Who knows, maybe it's just something our little girl came up with." When Du Jiai, who was sitting next to her, heard this, she was so anxious that she lowered her voice and said, "Mom, I'm not blindly guessing. If Ying isn't a good person, then how good can Yi Qian be? I've seen her with Xia Jinyuan before. It's the same with my cousin." Madame Li hurriedly covered the phone to prevent it from being overheard. She glared at her impatient daughter and reprimanded, "Who would believe you when you say that she disappeared without a trace? Sit down. Mom knows what to do." Regardless of whether there was a trace or not, that wild girl was indeed not a good person. If she really hooked up with Xia Jinyuan or Li Jinyan, it wouldn't affect her daughter at all. She could hook up with them however she wanted. Chapter 4895. Mrs. Li had a very bad impression of Yi Ying. Even after a few years, whenever Yi Ying's name was mentioned, her heart would still thump. As for Yi Qian, half of Mrs. Li's opinion of her was because of Yi Qian, and the other half was because of the first time she saw Yi Qian, she had an inexplicable dislike for her. In addition, Du Jiai would often complain about Yi Qian's shameless behavior. So Mrs. Li's impression of Yi Qian was even worse. A wild girl from the mountains fooling around everywhere, deluding herself to become a phoenix. She was indeed the same as her cousin Yi Ying, but now, even Qin Xiu was implicated. Even if there was no shadow, she had to be on guard. It would be best if she could push that wild girl out. Since she couldn't push the blame onto her son with a family Xia, pushing the blame onto Li Jinyan wasn't a bad idea. An orphan with no parents and an ingrate who wasn't liked by the elders in the family. They were a perfect match. Du Jiai wanted to say more, but Mrs. Li's gaze made her shut up. She sat down sullenly. Mrs. Xiao said something, and Mrs. Li laughed. "Oh, you're too nervous. She's just a wild girl from the mountains with no one to rely on. The only thing she has is her identity as a military academy student. What ability does she have to seduce this and that? My nephew Li Jinyan doesn't come home all year round. It's useless even if she knows him. As for sixth brother, it's the same. He's in the army all year round and doesn't come home. She can't get him either. The Qin family, it's the same situation. So what if she knows him? The three of them won't keep in touch with her all the time. You don't have to be too nervous. Don't be scared by Jiai. If old Sixth really likes that wild girl, I won't say anything else, but old Madame Xia will definitely not let her grandson marry a wild girl who has no mother, no father, no one to rely on, and who is always fooling around. Madame Xia. That's right, since Xia Xinhui was avoiding her, she could still go to Madame Xia. Madame Xia definitely wouldn't allow Yuan to casually bring a girl home. It's fine if she had a clean family background and a good character, but she was a girl who went out to provoke others. Even if Yuan didn't like her, As his mother, she had to stop him. When Du Jiayi heard Mrs. Li mention Madame Xia, her cold face slowly turned into a smile. Yes, why didn't she think of the family Xia? A hint of a smile finally appeared on Madame Zhao's cold face. You're right. Old Madame understands. The old folks won't allow old Six to casually bring a wild girl who popped out of nowhere back to the old residence. Tell Jiayi to relax. She's just a wild girl. If Qin Xiu really likes her, it's just a temporary novelty. She's naturally she. As for her, as long as Mrs. Qin was satisfied, she would be fine. Don't lose your composure because of someone who's not important. Madame Qin doesn't just need a daughter-in-law. She also needs a virtuous wife who can help Qin Xiu rise in his career. Madame Qin sees and remembers Jiayi's efforts. That's why she's always restraining Qin Xiu and not allowing him to casually bring anyone home. Jiayi can rest assured based on Madame Qin's attitude. Madame Xiao and Madame Li both thought so. Du Jiayi sometimes also thought so. But every time she thought of Yi Qian and what Madame Qin accidentally said, she panicked. She was very, very panicked. There was a kind of panic that couldn't be grasped no matter how hard she tried. Chapter 4896. Now that she had handed Yi Qian over to Mrs. Xiao to deal with, Mrs. Xiao would go to old Madame Xiao again. Du Jiayi, who had once again borrowed someone else's knife, coaxed Mrs. Xiao over the phone until the wrinkles around her eyes appeared. It was good to have a daughter. She could act coquettishly and coax people. If Yuan was a daughter, he probably wouldn't be in this situation today. After ending the call, Mrs. Xiao was a little depressed. Then she thought about how her only son was likely to be coaxed by a wild girl from the mountains who wanted to climb up the social ladder. Mrs. Xiao quickly put the sadness in her heart to the back of her mind and thought about how she needed to find an opportunity to find old Madame Xia. Going directly to find old Madame Xia was definitely not going to work. Old Madame Xia would not be willing to see her either. She had to think of another way. Soon, Mrs. Xiao set her sights on the family Xia's fifth daughter, Xia Yanin, who was rumored to have affairs with celebrities and models from time to time. In order to see old Madame Xia, Mrs. Xiao used a month to set up a trap. After setting up this trap, the one who suffered the most was not Xia Jinyuan, but Xia Yanin, who was always walking by the river and finally had her shoes wet. Thanks to this trap, Xia Yanin, who had been a headache for the entire family, unexpectedly stopped. It was a blessing in disguise. 3 months later, Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian found out about Mrs. Zhao's little trick. At this time, in the Gobi Desert where not even a blade of grass could grow, the sun was scorching during the day and the wind was bone-chilling at night. When Yi Qian found out that Mrs. Zhao's trap had caused Xia Yanin to be beaten up by her uncle and sent to the hospital, she couldn't help but be shocked as she held a hot water bottle. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. Mrs. Xiao is so powerful. Why didn't I see it before? Yi Qian was ashamed that she had misjudged her. No wonder you stopped her from seeing me back then. It turns out that both you and the commander-in-chief knew how powerful she was. Xia Jinyuan glanced at his silly wife and knocked on her forehead with his gloved hand. What do you think? Madame Xiao is so powerful that even the old madam is amazed by her. She can kill you with just a flick of her finger, given that you're so polite. He had yet to tell her why Mrs. Xiao wanted to scheme against Xia Yanin. If he did, she would be dumbfounded. There was no need to tell her the bad news. She only needed to know what kind of person Madame Xiao was. She was a person who knew how to scheme against others. Yi Qian originally wanted to ask Mrs. Xiao why she set up Xia Yanin, but before she could ask, Xia Jinyuan had already changed the topic. He asked her when the next phase of training would begin, and he planned to enter the second phase the day after tomorrow. While the two were talking, the female squad leader, First Lieutenant Yang Zhun, rushed into the office anxiously. When she saw that the instructor of the male squad was also there, she didn't even salute and said anxiously, "Instructor, Gao Xiao and Xiu Tong are fighting. He's even using his dagger." What? Yi Qian was shocked. He put down the military water bottle on the desk and ran out. Where are we going to fight? Is there anyone keeping an eye on him? What's the reason for the fight? Xiao Jinyuan's face immediately darkened. He said, "Let's go together," and ran out together. Yang Jun hurriedly answered as she ran. "It's a small training ground. Our comrades in the class are all there, and we're afraid that something will happen to them." Gao Xiao asked Xiao Tong to come out first. Xiao Tong won against Gao Xiao, but we didn't take it to heart. Later, I don't know what Xiao Tong said, but Gao Xiao suddenly became very agitated. Xiao Tong said a few more words, but I was too far away to hear clearly. Wang Zi said that she heard Xiao Tong say sorry to Gao Xiao, and that's when Gao Xiao became agitated. Yi Qian's eyes turned cold. Who was the first to use his dagger? Gao Xiao was the first. We were all shocked. Yang Zhen's face was also very ugly. As a first lieutenant, she used to be a deputy platoon leader. She came here for her dream, and now she was a squad leader. In the end, she couldn't even manage a 20-person class well. Yang Zhen blamed herself. Yi Qian was surprised to know that Gao Xiao was the first to use her dagger. His face was even colder than the cold wind in the middle of the night. Chapter 4897. It was not uncommon for soldiers to quarrel in the army, especially between male soldiers. They were all a group of hot-blooded young men, so it was normal for them to bump into each other. However, after a quarrel, it was very likely that they would become close friends, closer than real brothers. Basically, when soldiers quarreled, they would at most be verbally reprimanded and warned by the squad leader, but it would not escalate any further. Fighting was different. If it was just a few punches, a little friction, and no injuries were caused, the reprimand and confinement would be over. If the two of them really fought, all the soldiers would be severely punished because of their fight. Confinement for a few days was a small matter. All of them would not be allowed to sleep, and they would have to carry weights of more than 10 kilometers. These were the consequences of fighting. However, this time it was not as simple as a fist fight. Gao Xiao used her dagger. She swung the dagger that should have been stabbed at the enemy towards her comrade. It was not as simple as a fight. It had directly escalated to intentional injury. Once Xiao Tong was injured, according to military discipline, she would be punished, given a demerit record, and confinement. These would be a stain for life. Yi Qian ran extremely fast. Yang Zhen, who had good physical fitness, could only run less than 300 meters before she could no longer keep up with Yi Qian's running speed. Looking at the two figures running as fast as lightning, Yang Zhen began to worry for Gao Xiao and Xiao Tong. In the small sports field, the female soldiers took the opportunity to snatch the dagger in Gao Xiao's hand. One of the vice squad leaders knew that Gao Xiao had caused a big trouble, so he was so angry that he directly punched Gao Xiao in the stomach and shouted angrily, "Gao Xiao, do you not want to live anymore? How dare you use your dagger?" Gao Xiao, whose upper body was tightly held by another female soldier, could not move her arms and forcibly took the vice squad leader's fist. She coldly twitched the corner of her mouth as she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. She snorted and said, "It's just a spar. You think too much." Still stubborn, the vice squad leader's face was livid. He wanted to punch her again. "The instructor will be here soon. You better think about how to explain to the instructor." "Explain what?" "Chi." Gao Xiao turned her head and stared coldly at Xiao Tong, who was being persuaded by two female soldiers. She sneered, "Xiao Tong, do you think we were just having a spar? Really? Do you really want to have a spar?" A voice as cold as ice came from behind Gao Xiao. Instantly, the atmosphere in the field became stagnant, and the air pressure increased rapidly. Even the air seemed to have solidified, and the female soldiers found it hard to breathe. All the female soldiers, including Gao Xiao, suddenly stiffened and turned around to look. They saw their instructor Yi and the male soldier's instructor Xia standing behind them without them knowing when. The two of them were obviously a handsome man and a beautiful woman, but when they stood together, they looked like immortals in a painting. At this moment, their faces were dark and cold, and their gazes seemed to contain the exact same storm. Just by lightly touching their gazes, one's heart could not stop trembling. Gao Zhao's body stiffened as he whispered to his comrade, who was still hugging him, "Let go of me. Line up." "Chiao, chiao, chiao, chiao." of Chiu Tong, of Chiu Tong, of Chiu Chiu, of Chiu Chiu, Chiu Chiu Chiu. The squad leader, Yang Zhun, hadn't arrived yet, so the assistant squad leader had finished organizing the team. The 19 female soldiers kept quiet out of fear. They were so frightened by the two drill masters' cold expressions that they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Today, they might not be able to deal with the aftermath. "Who has the dagger?" Yi Qian asked. Every word was as cold as a sword that could hurt people. The female soldiers shrunk their shoulders even more. After 3.5 months of getting along, they had seen instructor Ye's harsh strictness. They did not dare to do anything in front of her. Gao Xiao and Chiu Tong spar today was a spontaneous spar that they usually organized to improve their abilities. Who knew? Gao Xiao would suddenly go crazy. Cut line 1. Girls, Qingyun's cervical vertebra is acting up again. It hurts so much that her head is dizzy and she is nauseous. I have to climb into bed and sleep. Don't wait tonight. Only one more. Chapter 4898. After the female soldiers snatched the dagger from Gao Zhao's hands, they immediately handed it to the assistant. When the assistant heard Yi Qian ask who had the dagger, she didn't even ask why Gao Xiao and Chiu Tong were arguing. Her heart thumped heavily as she gave Gao Xiao a look that said, "Good luck." Then she handed the dagger to Yi Qian, reporting, "The dagger is in my hands." The assistant handed over the dagger. When she saw Yi Qian's expression up close, she felt a chill run down her spine. It was as if she had stepped into a frozen pool. It was so cold that her teeth started to chatter. It's over, it's over. He's not just angry. He'll definitely be severely punished. After taking the dagger, Yi Qian pointed the tip of the dagger at Gao Xiao. His eyes were cold and stern. Gao Xiao stepped forward. The female soldiers in line couldn't help but tighten their abdomens. Their backs straightened, and their expressions became more solemn. "Yes." Gao Xiao stepped forward in response. Yi Qian glanced at Gao Xiao, who stepped forward and said, "Come here." The female soldiers glanced at Gao Xiao from the corners of their eyes. The uneasiness in their hearts grew. Not good, not good, not good at all. Gao Xiao was definitely going to be in big trouble. Instructor Yi definitely wouldn't let her off easily. Gao Zhao's eyes flickered. She pursed her lips. She hesitated for a moment before taking the first step. When she saw Yi Qian's expression become even more ruthless because of her hesitation, Gao Zhao's heart thumped heavily. She took a deep breath and took the second step with firm steps. She knew she had made a mistake, but she didn't regret it. No matter what kind of heavy punishment she would face, she would accept it without any objections. With every step, Gao Xiao told herself that she wouldn't regret it. When she took the 10th step and was about a meter away from Yi Qian, a black shadow suddenly shot straight at her. The female soldiers in line only saw their instructor Yi gently wave her arm. The combat dagger in her hand, which was coated with black plating to prevent reflection, turned into a black shadow and directly threw it towards Gao Xiao. The moment the dagger was thrown, the female soldiers' pupils contracted fiercely. They were afraid that the dagger would stab Gao Xiao. Gao Xiao's reaction was also quick. She immediately retracted her steps and stood there in a daze. Then, she slowly lowered her head. The combat dagger that was still in her hand a few minutes ago was now deeply embedded in the yellow sand. "Do you like to use knives?" Not far away, there was a piercing sound that made Gao Zhao's fingers tremble. Gao Xiao slowly raised her head. The moment of fear had finally arrived. "Pick it up. Let me see how capable you are to hold it." Yi Qian undid her camouflage cotton jacket. First, she unbuttoned it, then pulled down the zipper. Seeing that Gao Xiao did not move, she coldly asked Gao Xiao to pick up the dagger again. "Pick up the dagger." Every word was filled with danger that made the female soldiers and Chiu Tong's heart tremble. Gao Xiao. Why did instructor Yi let Gao Xiao pick up the dagger again? Gao Xiao didn't know either, but she had to pick it up. Xia Jinyuan was the only one who knew what Yi Qian would do. His handsome face was cold as he reminded him in a low voice, "Just scare him a little. Don't really stab him with a white knife." "Okay." The furious Yi Qian only replied with a single syllable. Xia Jinyuan was still worried that her anger would hurt her body, so he reminded her from behind, "Teach him a lesson. Don't make yourself too angry." Yi Qian said, "Don't worry, I'll control it. I'll take care of it. You go ahead." After a slight pause, she added, "Don't alert the higher-ups. I'll take care of it." She wanted Xia Jinyuan to leave. Xia Jinyuan thought for a moment. Seeing that Yi Qian's emotions did not fluctuate much, and knowing that she had always been calm when dealing with matters, he nodded. "Okay, let me know if there's anything." The instructor needed to teach his soldiers a lesson. As the instructor of the male soldier class, it was indeed inconvenient for him to stay and watch. Chapter 4899. After Xia Jinyuan left, the cold-faced Yi Qian walked towards Gao Xiao, who was bending down to pick up the dagger. He was only a meter away, so he closed the distance in a few steps. The female soldiers held their breaths. What was the instructor trying to do? Qiu Tong bit her lower lip. She was about to step forward when the vice commander shouted, "Qiu Tong, stand still. Can't you see that the instructor is angry?" The class monitor, Yang Zhen, hadn't appeared yet, so the vice commander had to restrain the soldiers. Yang Zhen wanted to rush over as soon as possible, but she was stopped by Company Commander Zhu. He asked her what was wrong and why she was so anxious. He even asked her if something had happened in the class and why she was looking for Instructor Yi. A comrade from the same class had attacked another comrade. Yang Zhen didn't dare to tell Company Commander Zhu about such a serious matter without Yi Qian's permission. Besides, she didn't want Company Commander Zhu to know about it. Company Commander Zhu knew that Yi Qian managed the female soldiers well, so he didn't suspect anything. He asked Yang Zhen a few questions and asked her to leave. As soon as he turned around and left, Yang Zhen's side started to run quickly. She ran so fast that dust started to form under her feet. Company Commander Zhu turned around again and looked at the soldiers beside him for a few seconds. He said in an exasperated tone, "Look at those female soldiers and then look at all of you. It's simply infuriating. They run faster than all of you. From now on, add 3 kilometers of light running every day." The female soldiers were improving day by day. Company Commander Zhu was happy but also depressed. He didn't feel that the male soldiers were improving at all. Yang Zhen, who was heading towards the field, didn't know that she had unintentionally increased the training for the male soldiers. When she bumped into Xia Jinyuan, she just nodded hurriedly and ran as fast as she could. When she arrived at the small field, Yang Zhen saw 2 figures fighting in the yellow dust a few meters away. Yang Zhen's breathing was erratic as she ran over. Her vision turned dark. They were still fighting, and they hadn't stopped. Where was Instructor Yi? Why didn't he stop them? What were the female soldiers doing standing there? Yang Zhen, who was so angry that her blood rushed to her head, ran until her legs felt like they were on fire. After running a few meters, Yang Zhen suddenly realized that something was wrong. If Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong were still fighting, the female soldiers couldn't be standing there. Then, the 2 people fighting probably weren't Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong. Could it be one of them was Instructor Yi? Thinking of this, Yang Zhen's heart relaxed. As long as it wasn't Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong who were still fighting, it was fine. The female soldiers who were standing in line couldn't bear to watch anymore. Qiu Tong was already laughing when Yi Jian threw her over her shoulder for the 3rd time. After she fell heavily onto the ground, she looked away. Instructor Yi said that since Gao Xiao had the ability to wield a knife, then she must have some skills. Why not let her have a look? Then, Gao Xiao took the dagger, and Instructor Yi snatched the saber with his bare hands. Gao Xiao had been thrown to the ground by Instructor Yi the moment he tried to snatch the saber. Now, he had been thrown to the ground 6 or 7 times. How long had it been? 2 falls in a minute. They all felt pain when they fell. Previously, it took a few of them some effort to take the dagger from Gao Xiao's hand. Instructor Yi, on the other hand, didn't even need to use any effort. He easily took the dagger every time. Just like now, he directly kicked Gao Xiao's right knee. causing Gao Xiao to groan in pain. One of his knees was heavily kicked into the fine sand. Even if he was wearing thick clothes, it would still be painful to kneel down like this. Gao Xiao, who was kicked by Yi Jian to kneel on one knee, looked a little pale. She still wanted to resist, but her right hand that was holding the dagger was pulled straight by Yi Jian and twisted in the opposite direction. The sharp pain of the twisted shoulder joint made Gao Xiao unable to bear it again and let out a painful cry. Chapter 4900. It wasn't over yet. Her right wrist was twisted again. Gao Xiao screamed twice in pain. She couldn't hold the dagger anymore. For the sixth time, the dagger fell from her hand. Then, Yi Qian kicked her in the back. She stumbled forward and fell to the ground. Her body was covered in dust, and she was in a sorry state. The female soldiers gently closed their eyes. Their eyelids trembled slightly, beating and kicking. Would Gao Xiao be able to take it? Yi Qian, whose eyes were cold, picked up the dusty dagger. As he walked, he wiped the dust off the dagger with his fingers. He walked to Gao Xiao, who hadn't gotten up yet. He threw the dagger in front of her again. He looked down and said coldly, "Stand up and continue." The female soldiers all looked down. Do they still want to continue? Would Instructor Yi beat Gao Xiao until he was disabled? Don't you like to use knives and guns? Don't you think you're very capable? That you can use knives freely and hurt people? Why can't you get up? Is that all you've got? His cold voice was full of sarcasm. Not only was Gao Xiao embarrassed, but the female soldiers in the formation also couldn't stand it anymore. If she really had the ability, why would she be scolded like this? Instructor Yi was telling Gao Xiao that if she didn't have the ability, she shouldn't come out and embarrass herself. Gao Xiao, who was dizzy from the fall and felt a little nauseous, used her hands to support her upper body. She looked at the dagger in front of her and looked up with a pale face. Her lips moved slightly. Before she could say anything, Yi Qian, who was looking at her coldly, said, "I don't want to hear any explanation from you. Stand up and continue. I'll count to 1, 2, 3. If you don't stand up, I'll order all the female soldiers to pick up their daggers and swing them at their comrades." 1. Gao Xiao was shocked. "Instructor." 2. Gao Xiao got up. She knew that Yi Qian wasn't joking. She would really do it. 3. Gao Xiao, who had crawled up, clutched the dagger tightly and screamed. She raised the dagger and pounced on Yi Jian again without any order. As soon as he moved, his stomach churned and a wave of sourness rushed straight to his throat. Yi Qian, who had dodged to the side, turned a blind eye to her discomfort. Didn't you want to use a dagger? Just let her use it all at once. To actually swing a dagger, used to kill enemies at a comrade who was fighting side by side with him. How cruel. No. Light. Mercy. Yi Qian's eyes turned even colder when she saw the disorderly attack. Stabbing a comrade with a sword was the most serious crime. Brandishing a sword while not being able to wield, it was the second most serious crime. Today, she would teach Gao Xiao a lesson that she would never forget. With one hand clasping Gao Xiao's wrist, she used her other hand to chop off her wrist. At the same time, she tripped Gao Xiao's right leg and used her knee to block Gao Xiao's knee to prevent Gao Xiao from kicking. Gao Xiao, who had lost all resistance in her hands and legs, was once again in pain. The pain in her wrist caused her entire hand to tremble uncontrollably. The pain in her wrist was still spreading throughout her body. Following that, she felt another pain in her right knee that was blocked by Yi Qian's knee. In that instant, she lost all her strength and knelt down on one knee again. In her panic, Gao Xiao tried to prop herself up with both hands. Unfortunately, Yi Qian didn't give her the chance. He raised his leg and used his calf as a point of strength to hit Gao Xiao's back hard. Gao Xiao's voice cracked as she was hit in the back. Her palm rubbed against the gravel, and she felt a burning pain in her palm. She fell to the ground, and a layer of dust rose around her body. Chapter 4901. Without giving Gao Xiao a chance to stand up, Yi Qian quickly retracted his leg and straddled Gao Xiao's back. His hand pressed down on the back of Gao Xiao's neck. Gao Xiao, who had eaten a mouthful of fine gauze, had no way to fight back. She could only be scolded from beginning to end. "Is this all you've got?" Yi Qian pressed down on the back of Gao Xiao's neck with one hand, causing her entire face to be pressed firmly against the rough and uneven ground. The fine, small, and angular gravel smashed into Gao Xiao's right cheek. The burning pain for being crushed made Gao Xiao tear up. "Who is Qiu Tong?" "She's your comrade, a comrade who would hand her back over to you. And you actually dared to wield a knife. Gao Xiao, you want to kill someone? Let's see if you have the ability to do so. Let's see if you'll be the one to kill or be killed." The dagger that fell into Yi Qian's hand brushed past the tip of Gao Xiao's nose and stabbed into the ground with force. He used too much force and was extremely fast. The dagger cut through the surface of the gravel, and the fine stone skin that was cut off splashed onto Gao Xiao's face like broken glass shards, instantly adding a few small wounds to Gao Xiao's face. Gao Xiao's eyes trembled when Yi Qian said, "A comrade who would hand her back over to you." Comrade. Even if she and Qiu Tong had a personal grudge, they were still comrades in arms today. And the dagger she used to kill enemies was wielded towards her comrade. The dagger stabbed into the ground. Yi Qian moved his hand away from the back of Gao Xiao's neck and stood up from her back. "Your tears are worthless. They won't move me. Stand up, continue." The female soldiers couldn't watch any longer. They turned to the squad leader, Yang Zhen, for help, hoping that she could step in and stop them. Yang Zhen didn't step in. Instead, she said to the female soldiers, "This is a warning to Gao Xiao, to let her know who we're facing with the dagger in our hands. Since she dared to stab her comrade with a dagger, then she must be severely punished." As a lieutenant, Yang Zhen used to be a leader. She knew how serious Gao Xiao's mistake was. Now, that instructor Yi didn't report it and only punished her by himself. He was already being extra merciful. Stop her? No one was allowed to persuade him until he lowered his head and admitted his mistake. Gao Xiao bit her lip as blood trickled down her left side. Even though her arm was so sore that it felt as if she had lifted a 100-kilogram heavy object, to the point where she could not even lift it slightly, she picked up the dagger again and threw herself at Yi Qian. There wasn't a single part of her body that wasn't in pain. Her entire body was in pain, even to her bones. However, she didn't have the chance to speak. She could only pick up the dagger again and swing it again and again. Half an hour later, Gao Xiao, who had been thrown down countless times, no longer had the strength to get up. She didn't even have the strength to hold the dagger. She fell to the ground and swallowed her dry throat. Looking at the instructor who was looking down at her, her voice was as hoarse as a wooden saw. "Instructor, Yi Qian knew what she wanted to say, but she did not want to hear it. She turned around and faced the female soldiers who had already seen her cruelty and were filled with fear. She gave the order, platoons 1 and 3, turn around. For the sake of convenience, Yi Qian divided the 19 female soldiers into 4 groups of 5. Swoosh! After the order was given, the female soldiers in platoons 1 and 3 quickly turned around to face their comrades in platoons 2 and 4. Following Yi Qian's order, everyone let out a sigh of relief. Was Gao Xiao's punishment over? It wasn't over. Yi Qian said calmly, "Pick up the daggers in your hands and stab your comrades with their backs facing you. Let Gao Xiao see what kind of punishment everyone will receive because of her mistake." Chapter 4902. Stabbing a comrade who could turn his back to you on the battlefield with a knife meant for killing enemies. The female soldiers facing him didn't even have the courage to pull out their daggers. How could they stab their own comrades in the back? How could they? Even Yang Zhen couldn't take it anymore. As a squad leader, she finally said, "Instructor, we know we were wrong. Please give us a chance to correct ourselves. We only need one chance. Just this once." The squad leader's words gave the female soldiers hope. Yes. They only needed one chance to correct themselves. Just this once, and they wouldn't make the same mistake again. There was no room for negotiation. Yi Qian only looked at them coldly. She used her expression to tell all the female soldiers that she didn't want to give them a chance. If they were all new recruits who had just joined the company for less than a month, then she might have forgiven them once and only given them a verbal warning. But they weren't. They were all veterans. There were even 2 second lieutenants and 1 first lieutenant. The rest of the female soldiers all had at least 2 years of military experience and had already memorized the rules. The punishment was to let Gao Xiao and all the female soldiers remember that if one person made a mistake, the whole class would be punished. There would be no exceptions. Gao Xiao, who was lying on the ground, was even more furious. She no longer had the strength to stand up and crawled to Yi Qian's side. At this time, her face no longer had the determination from before. There was only regret. She regretted it. She really regretted it. She begged bitterly, "Instructor, I was wrong, I was wrong. Please don't punish them. I know I was wrong." In the face of Gao Zhao's pleas, Yi Qian didn't even look at her. Facing the female soldiers who didn't even have the courage to pull out their daggers, she gave the order again. "Other than Xiao Tong, the rest of you listen to my orders. 1, 2, 3, stab." A soldier's duty was to obey orders. Even if the female soldiers didn't have the courage, they had to pull out their daggers and stab their comrades. "Didn't you eat? Have you all become soft-footed shrimps? Are you trying to play tricks?" Yi Qian's cold voice entered the female soldiers' ears. They couldn't respond at all. They could only stab with all their might. "Ah, ha!" The shouts of the female soldiers could be heard from the small field. Their shouts could be heard from afar. Company Commander Zhu, who was passing by, couldn't help but grind his teeth when he heard them. Battalion Commander Tian, on the other hand, laughed. "Not bad, not bad. The female soldiers are very hardworking. Zhu Zhonghua, all of you should learn from the female soldiers. Just look at him. His roar is so loud that it gives me goosebumps all over." Company Commander Zhu replied, "From today onwards, we'll run 5 kilometers with weights every day." The soldier at the side couldn't help but open his mouth wide. Half an hour ago, didn't he say that he was going to run 3 kilometers with light equipment? Why did it suddenly become a 5 kilometers run with weights? Battalion Commander Tian thought for a while before answering. "Even so, you don't have to run 5 kilometers with weights every day." That's right, that's right. Running 5 kilometers with weights every day would be awesome after those days. The soldiers who followed Company Commander Zhu along the way were so touched by Battalion Commander Tian's wisdom that they kept nodding their heads. "Why are you nodding your head?" Company Commander Zhu, who didn't understand the situation and was shocked by the female soldier's training posture, smacked the back of the soldier's head with his iron palm. With a pained expression, he said, "Battalion Commander, it's not that I don't want to make a reasonable arrangement. It's just that if the male soldiers in our camp are beaten into submission by the female soldiers in half a year, would you be happy? Wouldn't you feel proud?" If he wasn't happy, he wouldn't feel proud. Battalion Commander Tian immediately added, "Change it to running every other day. Going too far is as bad as not going far enough." "Okay, I'll listen to you." Company Commander Zhu readily agreed. He was afraid that Battalion Commander Tian would say something else. Chapter 4903. As a result, the 5-kilometer cross-country with weights that would be held every other day was happily decided. The soldier rubbed the back of his head and said to the battalion commander with a bitter face, "Battalion Commander, half an hour ago, the company commander said that we should run 3 kilometers without any weights. Now it's 5 kilometers with weights. Isn't the change of plans a little too fast?" Battalion Commander Tian laughed out loud. You, can't you tell? Your company commander must have been provoked. He's been provoked by the female soldiers who are slightly more hardworking. Young man, you have to endure hardships in order to rise above others. Why are there so many male soldiers who can't beat the female soldiers? Look at what they're doing and look at the time. Tell me, the female soldiers still lost to you in training. The one who's angry is Instructor Yi, not Company Commander Zhu. As expected, the back of the soldier's head was slapped by Company Commander Zhu's iron palm again. "You brat, You still have the face to say that. The soldier who was slapped twice in a row became obedient. If he dared to say anything else, he wouldn't be slapped again. Instead, he would be kicked by Company Commander Zhu. Yi Qian didn't know that his punishment for Gao Xiao had traumatized Company Commander Zhu. Seeing that the female soldiers were still trying to bluff their way out of the training, Yi Qian picked up a stone and threw it at them with great precision. After a few rounds, the female soldiers no longer dared to play any tricks. Gao Xiao was crying so hard that she didn't even look human. She almost hugged Yi Qian's leg. I was wrong. Instructor, I was wrong. Can you please ask them to stop? It's all my fault. It has nothing to do with them. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. Without the order to stop, the female soldiers who were swinging their swords couldn't stop. Gao Xiao could only watch and couldn't do anything. Even if it was a request, she couldn't do it. Qiu Tong was no exception. She knew that Gao Xiao was wrong, and she also knew that she was wrong. Now the instructor only wanted her and Gao Xiao to watch their comrades get punished because of them. That was 100 times worse than being punished herself. Qiu Tong, who couldn't hold it in any longer, ran over and stood beside Yi Qian. She didn't know how a soldier should behave and said loudly, "Instructor, I was wrong. Gao Xiao and I have already realized our mistakes. Please punish us." "Yes, instructor, I was wrong. I was wrong. Please punish me, okay? Can you punish me alone?" Gao Xiao wiped her tears and struggled to get up. Her legs had been kicked countless times by Yi Qian. She didn't even have the strength to stand firmly. When she staggered to her feet, Qiu Tong quickly caught her. With Qiu Tong's help, Gao Xiao finally stood up. "Instructor, please punish me severely." From now on, he would never do it again. "I will never target Qiu Tong again. I promise I won't do it again." Gao Xiao, who still had to lean on Qiu Tong to stand up, promised again. Seeing that Yi Qian had no reaction at all and was still staring at her coldly, Gao Xiao turned to face Qiu Tong and apologized sincerely with reddened eyes. "Qiu Tong, I'm sorry. Please forgive me for what I have done. Please forgive me." After saying that, Gao Xiao bowed deeply. Qiu Tong hurriedly helped Gao Xiao up. With tears in her eyes, she choked and said, No, you didn't do me wrong. I was wrong in the first place. I should have explained it to you first instead of running away after it happened and leaving all the problems for you to deal with alone. I'm sorry. I should be the one saying sorry. I'm sorry, Gao Xiao. Please forgive me for hurting you. I'm sorry. Chapter 4904. Qiu Tong's words made Gao Xiao blame herself even more. How could she use violence against her comrades because of a liar? How could she? Gao Xiao, who cried until she hiccuped, held Qiu Tong's wrist tightly. Her voice was completely hoarse, and she cried until she lost control of her emotions. No, it's my fault. I should listen to your explanation. It's not your fault. It's all that bastard's fault. He lied to me and you. We're both victims. I'm too narrow-minded. I can't vent my anger on that bastard, so I can only vent all my anger on you. I'm sorry. I hope you can forgive me. The two, who were once like fire and water, were punished because of their comrades. Finally, one could muster up the courage to explain, while the other could listen to the explanation calmly and understand that it was not the other's fault. The biggest problem was solved. Although Yi Qian felt relieved, her anger did not disappear. She asked Qiu Tong to support Gao Xiao to the side. She watched as her comrades stabbed each other with knives. Seeing the two of them with tears streaming down their faces, their bodies swaying, and their emotions close to the edge, Yi Qian ordered all the female soldiers to stop. 20 minutes had passed. The camouflage cotton-padded clothes the female soldiers wore were cut by the sharp daggers, revealing the thermal layer. The moment they heard the command, all their strength disappeared. Their arms seemed to have left their bodies. They did not even have the strength to put the daggers back into the scabbard. Qiu Tong supported Gao Xiao. The two of them staggered and cried as they walked toward their comrades who were implicated. Yi Qian, who was watching from the side, heard the two of them repeatedly saying sorry to their comrades. They apologized and hugged them as they walked. It's okay. The two of you, you can't do what you did today again. Especially Gao Xiao. You provoked Xiao Tong every time, and Xiao Tong gave in to you every time. You push your luck. You should be punished severely. Don't cry. You're so ugly. Are you trying to make me laugh? Fine, fine. It's just a few cuts on the clothes. It's okay. I'm not hurt. Now you regret it. You even stabbed Xiao Tong with a knife. I think the instructor didn't punish you too well. The grudges between the two of you end today. Remember, don't play with my heart like you did today. I'm the oldest among all of you. Alas, I'm old, and my heart can't help but be frightened. Gao Zhao's apology was met with the tolerance of her comrades. Not only were they not angry, they even comforted Gao Xiao, who had cried until she was out of breath. Oh my God, you're crying like this. Those who don't know will think that we're ganging up on you. Don't cry. You look like a clown with black and yellow streaks on your face. I want to laugh when I see you. A female soldier couldn't help but laugh out loud when she saw Gao Yi crying so hard that she almost fainted. She looked at Gao Yi's messy face and couldn't help laughing out loud. Yi Qian gave all the female soldiers 5 minutes to rest and reorganize. When the 5 minutes were up, the cold voice sounded again. It was only 2 words, simple and effective. Assemble. The class monitor, Yang Zhen, stood up immediately and shouted, "Everyone gather! Quick!" With a flurry of footsteps, the 19 female soldiers had assembled. Yang Zhen clenched her fists and placed them under her chest. She jogged to Yi Qian's side and saluted him. Reporting to instructor, there are 20 female soldiers in the squad. Please give your instructions. Return to the team. Yes. Yang Zhen jogged back to the team. At this time, almost an hour had passed since Gao Xiao stabbed Xiao Tong with a knife. Gao Xiao, who was miserably reprimanded by Yi Qian, stood in the team and prayed in her heart that it would end quickly. She didn't want to see her comrades get implicated because of her. Chapter 4905. Yi Qian didn't hear Gao Zhao's thoughts. The punishment was over, but that was only the beginning. The latter part was not over yet. She wanted to tell all the female soldiers that they were a group, an inseparable group. They had to have a collective spirit and not an individualistic spirit. She also wanted to let them know that they had made a mistake and that everyone had to be punished. She wanted them to pay attention to themselves at all times and remind themselves that they were not an individual, but a group. Even as an instructor, she was no exception. Go back to your room immediately and pack your luggage. Go cross-country with weight for 30 kilometers and set up camp in the Gobi Desert. Return to the barracks for breakfast the next day. As for dinner, forget it. Xia Jinyuan had been paying attention to the female soldier class. He even watched as Yi Qian left the barracks with 20 female soldiers. Battalion Commander Tian told him that the female soldier class will be going cross-country with weight for 30 kilometers and set up camp in the Gobi Desert. Battalion Commander Tian pondered for a moment and said, "Do you want to give it a try for the male soldier class? The temperature in the Gobi Desert is negative 20 degrees at night. It's their first time going out, so I'm a little worried. Instructor Yi will be fine. She is trained in the Gobi Desert." The other female soldiers are indeed worrying. Xia Jinyuan was indeed a little worried. Before he could say that the male soldiers could give it a try, Company Commander Zhu rushed over from not far away. Before he could catch his breath, he said, "Battalion Commander, I just heard that the female soldiers will be going cross-country with weights for 30 kilometers. They'll set up camp in the Gobi Desert and return tomorrow morning. What about us? Do we want to go too?" "You came at the right time. I was thinking the same thing. Let Captain Xia bring 20 male soldiers with her. They can look after each other at the same time." Battalion Commander Tian didn't know what Company Commander Zhu wanted to say, so he stopped him. "If both sides are training together, why don't we carry weights together?" Company Commander Zhu didn't argue this time. He thought about it and nodded. "Sure. Captain Xia's male soldiers are all elites in our barracks. It's reassuring to have them with us." It turned out that Company Commander Zhu was also worried about the female soldiers, so he came over. Thus, Yi Qian set out with 20 female soldiers. Less than 15 minutes later, Xia Jinyuan set out with the male soldiers so that they could look after each other. As for what exactly happened to the female soldier class, Battalion Commander Tian did not say anything after he learned about it. He did not have any objections to Yi Qian's handling of the matter. He even said to Political Commissar Tang, "Our instructor Yi is quite heartless. That's how it should be." She even dared to point a knife at her comrade. "If I don't teach her a lesson, who knows what kind of trouble she will cause in the future. Since Instructor Yi has given us a heavy punishment and has no intention of reporting it, let's just pretend that we don't know about it. She'll be in charge." Political Commissar Tang objected. "We can't pretend that we don't know anything, and we can't just let it go. The bad atmosphere can't be encouraged. It has to be completely eliminated. We can't leave behind any hidden dangers. Then let's wait for Instructor Yi to come back before we discuss it together. We can't possibly overtake her." Political Commissar Tang nodded. "Yes, we should discuss it with her." On the other side, Xia Jinyuan caught up with Yi Qian and said, "You can't just deal with it in the classroom. Gao Zhao's mistake is not simple. If she only used her fists, you could just deal with it in the classroom. There's no need to report it. But she used a knife. It can be seen as intentional murder or injury. If the situation is serious, only the classroom can deal with it." The battalion commander and political commissar will not agree. Yi Qian lacked experience in these matters. Xia Jinyuan needed to give her some pointers. Chapter 4906. Yi Qian pursed his lips and said in a low voice, "Do I have to report it?" Gao Xiao admitted her mistake with a good attitude. She also knew that she was wrong. "I punished her." "Okay." "No, you have to report it. You don't have to worry too much. Although you made a serious mistake, you didn't hurt anyone. You handled it well. So Company Commander Zhu probably won't punish Gao Xiao severely. At most, he will criticize her in the camp. If it was just a criticism, then there was nothing to worry about." Yi Qian was worried that Gao Xiao would be grounded for half a month. Since it was just a criticism, there was no need to worry. Yi Qian carried a 20-kilogram backpack and ran at the front with Xia Jinyuan. As for Gao Xiao, who was beaten up by her, Yi Qian didn't care about her. The female soldiers would take care of her. Gao Xiao cried a few times as she was taken care of by her comrades. She swore in her heart that she wouldn't make any more mistakes, not even a small one. The 30-kilometer cross-country journey continued. The female soldiers took care of each other. From the time the sun was still up in the sky to the time the sun set in the west, they didn't stop at all. Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan, who were walking at the front, didn't stop. How could the female and male soldiers dare to stop? After the 20-kilometer journey, all the soldiers, including the male soldiers, had to support each other. However, the two people walking at the front were still walking with big strides. They didn't even need to support each other. The male soldiers already knew that Xia Jinyuan was from the Special Forces, so they weren't too surprised. What surprised the male soldiers was the female instructor. She was able to keep up with Captain Xia and didn't fall behind at all. She even competed with Captain Xia a few times and didn't fall behind. After the 30-kilometer journey was complete, the camp was set up at 10 p.m. Other than the sentries, the rest of the soldiers were resting. A male soldier asked Yi Qian what she trained in the military academy and why she was better than the graduates he had seen. Xia Jinyuan laughed and raised his eyebrows. Why? Of course, it was because Instructor Yi was also from the Special Forces. But he couldn't say it. Yi Qian told her that it was because the training sessions were usually longer than usual, and that was why it ended up like this. No one would believe such an ordinary answer. In the end, it was Xia Jinyuan who helped Yi Qian smooth things over. Instructor Yi grew up in a military family. When she was young, the one who taught her was a first-class sergeant major. He was a first-class sergeant major that even the leaders would shake hands with. The second life instructor is also an outstanding veteran with excellent marksmanship. That's why your instructor Ye's marksmanship is so good. Thanks to the meticulous nurturing of the two seniors, Instructor Yi is the one you see today. If you start practicing from a young age, it wouldn't be right if you aren't powerful. The female soldiers were dumbfounded. while the male soldiers were full of admiration. It turned out to be like this. He had started training since he was young to achieve what he had today. Then what kind of training did he receive when he was young? It was the female soldier who asked, "What kind of training is there?" Xia Jinyuan answered for Yi Qian again, saying that he knew his girlfriend best. He spoke eloquently, and Yi Jian, the person involved, listened with great interest. Sometimes, she had to recall whether it had happened or not. When she recalled and confirmed that it had happened, there was an indescribable sweetness in her heart. She didn't even take the training seriously. She didn't expect Captain Xia to take it seriously and remember it so clearly. However, there was a problem. After a female soldier finished listening, she suddenly asked, "Captain Xia, why do you know so much about Instructor Yi?" "That's right. Why?" Chapter 4907. It had to be said that the female soldiers were more meticulous than the male soldiers. The male soldiers envied Yi Qian because he had been trained since he was young. The female soldiers asked Xia Jinyuan why he knew so much about Yi Qian. Some of the male soldiers asked Xia Jinyuan what kind of first-rank sergeant major he was and what kind of outstanding veteran he was to nurture Yi Qian with so much effort. The female and male soldiers focused on different things. While the female soldiers were amazed, they thought more about it and were more meticulous. As soon as the question came out, even Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who had always been quick-witted, was stunned by the question. Her gaze subconsciously fell on Yi Qian, who was sitting opposite her. She was so pleased with herself that the female soldier caught the crux of the matter. Yi Qian was fine. He didn't panic. She mainly believed that her man would definitely be able to answer perfectly. Where a man's gaze fell on her, Yi Qian, who was still waiting for his answer, was also stunned. She immediately realized that her man had been stumped by the question. Who asked him to be so smug and talkative? Great. The female soldiers had asked the crux of the matter. Xia Jinyuan's hesitation made the female soldier who asked the question a little nervous. She whispered, "Is it inconvenient to say?" "If it's inconvenient, then don't say it. I don't have any other intentions. I was just casually asking." Oh my God, did she ask a question that she shouldn't have asked? It was very likely to be a hidden secret. It would have been fine if the female soldier didn't say anything. After she said it, even the insensitive male soldiers felt that something was wrong, not to mention the other female soldiers. Thanks to the other male soldier who asked the question, Xia Jinyuan had time to catch his breath. He smiled and said, "It's not inconvenient. I'm just thinking if I should answer you first or the male soldier first." The female soldier immediately said, "Answer the male soldier. We also want to know the glorious deeds of the two seniors who nurtured Instructor Yi to such an outstanding state." A first-rank sergeant major who was comparable to a national treasure was even rarer than meeting the country's leader. Very outstanding. That sergeant major is familiar with all kinds of firearms and ammunition. He knows them like the back of his hand. The Type 95 that you're holding in your hands right now even had this sergeant major suggestions that were accepted. Tomorrow, I'll let your instructor Yi show off her skills. Mix together countless gun parts of different models. She can find all the gun parts you need in 1 minute and assemble them in 3 minutes. Keep your jaws down and don't make a fuss. This is just the tip of the iceberg for your instructor Yi. There are more powerful ones. No one could beat her when it came to assembling guns with her eyes closed. I, too, was defeated by her. So powerful. Really? Instructor, when are you going to show us your skills? Our 2nd Battalion also has a person who can assemble a gun with his eyes closed. He can accurately find the required gun parts in a pile of gun parts. When he showed off his skills, even the division commander was shocked. I didn't expect Instructor Yi to know it too. The male soldier said, there were many capable people in the army. There were also many capable people who could assemble guns with their eyes closed and find gun parts. It was just a matter of time. When Xia Jinyuan heard this, he was instantly interested. The 2nd Battalion isn't far from us. Find a chance to compete with Instructor Yi and see who's better. Yi Qian was already holding his forehead when he heard this. When he heard that they were going to compete, He couldn't hold it in anymore and quickly said, "Don't, Captain Xia. Please don't do it. I don't want to be roasted on a fire." Yi Qian had a low-key personality, unlike Xia Jinyuan, who had a strong ability to control the situation. Therefore, when Xia Jinyuan kept showing off his wife, Yi Qian kept trying to hide himself. Chapter 4908. At this moment, she was a few centimeters away from her original position. If she continued to move, she would be completely out of Xia Jinyuan's line of sight. How could Xia Jinyuan not notice? As he ran happily to show off his wife, he smiled and tried his best to control his gaze from looking at Yi Qian from time to time. The female soldiers were very smart. He couldn't let them see any clues. The male soldiers were more interested than Xia Jinyuan. As for why Xia Jinyuan was so familiar with Yi Qian, they forgot about it. They chased after Yi Qian and said with a smile, "Instructor Yi, you can really compete with him. There are many capable people in our division, but none of them are as comprehensive as you. Each of them has their own strengths. You, on the other hand, have combined all of their strengths. It will definitely be exciting." It was in the male soldiers' nature to admire martial arts, and the army was a place where they fought to be the best. They had an innate admiration for the strong. Even though Yi Qian was a female soldier, it didn't affect their admiration for Yi Qian. Even though they hadn't seen Yi Qian show his true strength, they believed Xia Jinyuan's words without a doubt. This also showed that Xia Jinyuan's leadership ability was very strong. They didn't believe him, but they obeyed his orders. Yi Qian had a headache, but he couldn't tear down the platform set up by his man. He smiled and said, "If there's a chance, I'll definitely ask for your guidance." 3 months had passed since half a year had passed. They would leave the Northwest in another 3 months. How could there be a chance to compete? Seeing this, Xia Jinyuan probably felt that he had shown off his wife too much today. He slowly took over the topic and said, "If there's a chance, I'll ask for your guidance. I haven't seen Instructor Yi show his strength in a long time." A female soldier immediately said, "He hasn't shown his strength yet. On the first day we arrived, Instructor Yi's strength completely overwhelmed us. Isn't this just showing his strength?" Xia Jinyuan chuckled and looked at his girlfriend, who was having a headache. His low voice drifted into Yi Qian's ears like the sound of a zither being played in the cold wind. "It doesn't count. It doesn't count. Your Instructor Yi is too exciting. He's like a treasure trove. You never know what you'll find the next second." The male soldiers were so excited that they screamed. They couldn't wait to find out how exciting Yi Qian was right now. Hearing the male soldiers' screams, Yi Qian could only feel helpless. Why didn't she realize that Captain Xia liked to talk about her so much? "You're always talking about her, but why don't you talk about yourself?" "Captain Xia, stop talking. If you keep talking, I want to hide." Yi Jian had no choice but to compromise in the face of Xia's wife flaunting. He said to the male soldiers, "It's not impossible for me to show off my skills, but there are conditions." "What conditions?" they asked in unison. Yi Jian replied with a smile, "You guys are going to lose. Double the training." "Then what?" "Ha ha ha, forget it." Captain Xia was fierce enough, but they didn't expect Instructor Yi to be so fierce. Xia Jinyuan laughed out loud when the male soldiers suddenly became obedient. He lifted his leg and kicked the male soldier closest to him. "What a bear. Don't you feel embarrassed?" "Captain Xia, I'm not a bear. Double the training. We only have 5 hours of rest every day for post-training. If we double the training, will we still have time to rest?" "That's right. That's why you're retreating." Yi Qian pursed her lips and smiled. Xia Jinyuan gave her a thumbs up and sighed. "Instructor Yi is amazing. You made my soldiers cower." Yi Qian clasped her hands. "Captain Xia, you're too humble." Their tone was the most normal, and their relationship was the most innocent. No one could tell that there was anything wrong between them. Chapter 4909. Over at the female squad, several female soldiers looked at each other silently. Why they still felt that something was wrong. Gao Xiao and Qiu Tong finally had the courage to look back and forth between Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan. After looking around, Gao Xiao whispered to Chiu Tong and her comrades, I don't see anything wrong with them. What about you guys? They also couldn't see anything wrong and shook their heads. Chiu Tong tightened her winter jacket and whispered, Captain Xia is so familiar with our instructor. Do you really think there's nothing wrong with him? Then, can you tell? Gao Xiao asked. After thinking for a while, Chiu Tong replied, Same as you guys, I can't tell. I've never seen Captain Xia and the instructor interact in private. Sometimes, even if they meet, they just nod and say a few words politely. I don't think they have a relationship that goes beyond friendship. Let's listen to Captain Xia's explanation. Gao Xiao decided and stopped discussing with her comrades in private. She secretly rubbed her sore calves and listened attentively, afraid that she would miss a word. Yang Zhen and the assistant were relieved to see the two people who fought so fiercely during the day but could sit together and whisper to each other at night. They finally reconciled. I was most afraid that I would be lectured for nothing today. In private, their relationship is still the same. You ignore me and I ignore you. The assistant patted her chest and whispered. They were all wearing thick winter jackets that were issued for winter field training. When they sat down, they could zip it from head to toe and turn it into a sleeping bag that could resist the cold. At night, the cold wind from the Gobi Desert blew over like ice knives. It was not so cold that it hurt the flesh, but it was bone-chilling. Yang Jin came from Guangdong province, and her hometown was Hainan. This kind of weather was soul-destroying for her. Even though she had been cold for more than a month, she still couldn't stand it. She clutched the winter jacket tightly and curled her legs tightly. Her voice was trembling as she said, Our instructor won't give them a chance to continue making trouble. I think the instructor knew that they were not on good terms from the beginning, so he started thinking about how to break the ice between them. But the instructor didn't expect Gao Xiao to use a knife, so he was furious. After saying that, Yang Zhen rubbed her hands and sighed, I really feel that the ones who are really angry are like our instructors. They're not like you yelling and screaming. They're so calm that you can't even see the undercurrent. It's like the undercurrent at the bottom of the sea. You can't see it, but it's very dangerous. Look, during the day, she didn't get angry at Gao Xiao at all. But when she was scolding Gao Xiao, the murderous aura around her was unbearable. She didn't even dare to speak. It was the same for her as the class monitor. The assistant nodded lightly. That's right. If I really yelled, I probably wouldn't be so scared. At least I would know that she was angry and what she would do. Our instructor doesn't yell or scold her, so we can't guess what she wants to do. Although I'm 2 years older than the instructor, I didn't have any confidence at that time. I was shocked by her. The two promoted second lieutenants were several years older than Yi Qian, and the oldest female soldier was 3.5 years older than Yi Qian. Now, in front of them, age and seniority were all placed at the back, and they didn't want to mention anything. Yang Jin said, Yes, I'm the same as you. Especially when she was scolding Gao Xiao for half an hour, I really couldn't bear it. Only then did I know that the instructor is so good at fighting. She's not even 22 years old yet. Both of them became silent. Chapter 49:10. They were born as humans, but they were very different. Some people were born with wealth and honor. Some are born with ordinary clothes and food, and some are born with hard work to become God's favored son, while some lived a hard life until they died in poverty. They were born different, and even their lives were different. Yang Zhen and the vice squad leader didn't know about Yi Qian's past hardships. Based on Xia Jinyuan's words, they thought that Yi Qian came from a wealthy family. Although they were silent for a short while, they each had their own thoughts. The vice squad leader broke the silence and said softly, It has a lot to do with her family environment. Captain Xia said that our instructor's life mentor was a first-grade sergeant major and an outstanding veteran. Who could be as lucky as our instructor? Although she was lucky, she still had to rely on her own efforts. In my original army, there were many people who relied on their family connections to get by. They were like vermin. But our instructor is different. Look at her. She relied on her own abilities. Yes, I admire her the most. She didn't rely on her family and relied on herself. She was far better than those who relied on their family connections to get by. The vice squad leader felt the same way. There were people who relied on their family connections to get by. The conversation continued. As for why Captain Xia knew so much about Instructor Yi, the male soldiers kept asking questions, but Xia Jinyuan deliberately ignored them. Until they went to bed, the female soldiers still didn't hear the answer. But by then, no one cared anymore. Even the female soldiers seemed to have forgotten about it. It was late at night, and it was quiet. The bone-chilling wind in the Gobi Desert was still rampant. The two sentinels standing in the wind shelter held their steel guns and looked straight ahead. Even if their lips were purple from the cold, they didn't complain about their tiredness or suffering. There was one sentinel from each squad, one female soldier and one male soldier. They took turns to be on duty every 3 hours. At 2 o'clock in the morning, when it was the coldest, the instructors of the two squads would take over on time. Even outside, the sentry handover procedures were strictly followed. Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian saluted the two sentinels on duty, and the sentinels saluted back. Comrade Sentinel, please stand guard. Everything is normal. Please stand guard. Yes, sir. After the two sentries were laid off, Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian stood guard from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, just in time for them to return to the barracks. This was not the first time the two of them had been on guard duty together, but it was the first time they had been on guard duty since they graduated from Yi Qian. The two of them stood back to back and could even chat occasionally to ease their fatigue. Although the Gobi Desert was cold, the sky was full of twinkling stars. The stars were shining brightly one after another. The faint, smoky blue starlight highlighted the undulating lines of the Gobi Desert and the barren mountains in front of them. The heaven and earth were black and yellow. The universe was chaotic. The sun and the moon were shining, and the stars were arranged in rows. This was the current scene. Soft rustling sounds could be heard in the wind. It was the sound of the two sentries slipping into their sleeping bags. When everything returned to normal, Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who was on sentry duty, turned his head to look at Yi Qian, whose back was facing him. Then his long legs took a step back, then another, until he could no longer retreat. He finally stopped when he was right next to Yi Qian's back. Yi Qian, who was standing guard seriously and looking straight ahead, said somewhat helplessly, "Captain Xia, stand guard properly. Chatting won't affect my sentry duty." Xia Jinyuan, who was looking around, said in a low voice. Although his eyes were cold, his voice contained some warmth. "Were you nervous before? Were you angry?" He was referring to the crucial point that the female soldier had asked. Yi Qian thought for a moment, then smiled and said, "I'm not nervous. You can handle it well. Angry? No, I'm just not used to it. But I'm sure you have your reasons for doing so. So although I'm not used to it, I can accept it." Wasn't it easy to handle? In the end, he didn't even answer the female soldier. Chapter 49:11. As for why Xia Jinyuan did this, Yi Qian believed that he would give her an answer that she could accept, because he understood her better than anyone else. Xia Jinyuan laughed at her unconditional trust. "You trust me so much? Aren't you afraid that I'll tell you that I've known you for 8 years? Xia Jinyuan laughed so hard that his dark eyes seemed to be shining brightly. He sighed and said, 8 years. I've known you for 8 years. 8 years. How many days and nights did it feel like just yesterday? That year, they met by chance in the mountains. Yi Qian was not yet 14 years old and was still in her second year of middle school. Today, Yi Qian had graduated from the military academy and was serving as a military officer. She was leading a group of female soldiers who might become the first female special forces unit in China. She had a heavy responsibility and was carrying the hopes of the military leaders. From an ignorant, stumbling little girl who was confused about her future, to an active military officer who had a clear direction and a clear goal, Xia Jinyuan could be said to have witnessed Yi Qian's journey. He had seen her at her worst, when she was at her toughest, and when she was at her most glorious. They had too many things in common and too many things to talk about. Even though they were in the same unit, they did not interact much in private, and only nodded at each other when they met. However, the two of them had the same thoughts and were very satisfied with just a short exchange of glances. 8 years. She had known Captain Xia for 8 years. Yi Qian, whose eyebrows were filled with warmth, said softly, It's been 8 years. I think I've only known Captain Xia for a short while. I also feel like I've only known you for a short while. If old man Xia hadn't reminded me 2 days ago, I wouldn't have thought that I've known you for 8 years. I told you so many things tonight, but I didn't tell you in advance. Fortunately, you're not angry. Otherwise, I would have to think of a way to make you happy. Then I'd better say I'm angry. That way, you can make me happy. Yi Qian immediately smiled and said, I just don't know how you're going to make me happy. I'm quite curious. I'll make you forgive me. I'll make you smile when you see me and not get angry. I haven't thought of a specific method yet. Now, Yi Qian was being coaxed by Lieutenant Colonel Xia to the point that the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl upwards. Then what's the reason for you to keep talking about me? Xia Jinyuan paid special attention to his back. After confirming that there was no movement, he lowered his voice and told Yi Qian the real reason. To lay down a cornerstone for the future. You and I can't stay in the brigade forever. When we reach a certain age, we'll leave the brigade. At that time, it's unlikely that you and I will retire immediately. Instead, we'll take another path, one that's different from the one we're taking now. The foundation of the other path is not something that can be built in a day. It is accumulated over time. Every piece of cornerstone that is laid may make the other path easier for us in the future. The consideration of a politician is something that you and I have never considered before. It's also the benevolence of a parent. Commander-in-Chief Xia was already 62 years old. At most, he would retire when he was 70 years old. Xia Jinyuan was 6 years older than Yi Qian. When the commander-in-chief retired, Xia Jinyuan would leave as the leader of the Snowfield Brigade in less than 2 years. Then, he would have to make arrangements for where he would go. Moreover, Xia Jinyuan's military rank would at most be senior colonel. Any higher, and he would be major general. There was a huge gap between senior colonel and major general. Countless senior colonels had stopped there and found it difficult to advance any further. Chapter 49:12. Xia Jinyuan was like this, and Yi Qian would be like this in the future. In that case, Commander-in-Chief Xia would have to make certain arrangements for his son and daughter-in-law in advance. Commander-in-Chief Xia would not rely on connections. He would only appropriately remind Xia Jinyuan that when he reached a certain age, he would need to make certain plans for the future. Commander-in-Chief Xia would take Yi Qian's future arrangements, her whereabouts, and her future promotion into consideration. He would not interfere, but he would not let it happen either. The considerations of a politician were complicated and ever-changing. Even if Yi Qian had lived 2 lives, she would not be able to understand the twists and turns of this. After all, in her previous life, Yi Qian was just an ordinary person. She was an ordinary person who had to worry every day about whether she would be chased out the next day. Even if she lived another life, she would not be able to understand it. What she lacked in her previous life, she would have to slowly make up for in this life. Now that Xia Jinyuan had explained the reasons clearly, Yi Qian still did not fully understand. She still had to think about it carefully before she could come to her senses. Xia Jinyuan did not immediately ask Yi Qian if she understood. After he finished speaking, he added, "You can take your time to think about it. Let me know when you understand. It's only 2:10 p.m. now. We have enough time." Yi Qian really did think about it carefully. She just did not quite understand how her future development with Captain Xia had anything to do with the current army and the female soldiers. Fortunately, Yi Qian was quite perceptive. After having the experience of fighting a battle of wits and courage with Yi Jifan, Yi Qian thought for less than 10 minutes before she asked softly, "Do you need supporters?" Just like how Xia Jinyuan would not say things too clearly, Yi Qian did not need to say the reason she had thought of it too clearly. Xia Jinyuan naturally understood what she meant. His thin lips curved slightly, and he replied with an "The topic ended there." She had an idea in her heart and would not mention it again in the future. Yi Qian let out a long sigh. He was impressed by Commander-in-Chief Xia's long-term planning. She even thought about how she and Captain Xia would develop after leaving the brigade. She really thought about the long term. Since Captain Xia had told her about the Commander-in-Chief's plans for the future, it meant that Captain Xia also had such plans. The 22-year-old Yi Qian really hadn't thought that far ahead. She hadn't even joined the Snowfield Brigade yet, so how could she possibly think so far ahead? It would take at least a decade or so. This was also the first time Yi Qian had come into contact with politics and strategy. Her heart was still a little unsettled. Fortunately, the cold wind was cold enough to calm her down quickly and stop her thoughts from running wild. After Xia Jinyuan finished talking about the most important matter, he did not say a single word to Yi Qian after that. While on duty, the sentries were not allowed to communicate with each other. This was a rule. At around 3 o'clock in the morning, the two men standing in the cold wind tightened their grip on the rifles in their hands at the same time and whispered at the same time, "There's movement." The two men quickly moved their backs together. Xia Jinyuan said in a deep voice, "Front left, 2 o'clock. Be alert." The rifle was loaded immediately. Xia Jinyuan quickly crawled and hid. Yi Qian tightened her waist and left the sentry post. She needed to inform all the soldiers to be on alert. There were actually footsteps at 3 o'clock in the morning in the Gobi Desert. It wasn't just 1 or 2 footsteps, but at least 5. After waking up Yang Zhen, Yi Qian said in a cold voice, "There's movement. I'll inform the male soldiers. You wake up all the female soldiers. Don't make any movements." Yang Zhen opened her eyes and was completely awake. "Yes, ma'am." She immediately zipped up her winter jacket, hugged the rifle that was still warm, and woke up her comrades immediately. In less than 2 minutes, all 20 female soldiers and 20 male soldiers were awake. Their eyes were bright as they gathered around. 5 footsteps were heading north. The launch base was in the north. Chapter 49:13. Ever since the last incident, the soldiers stationed in this restricted military zone were on high alert. They were even more alert than rabbits at the slightest sign of trouble and reacted very quickly. Although the female soldiers did not know what happened last time, they knew that it was definitely abnormal for someone to not sleep in the middle of the night and to be in the Gobi Desert on such a cold day. Then they would definitely catch the culprit. The 20 female soldiers were even more excited than the 20 male soldiers. They were all rubbing their hands and waiting for action. Xia Jinyuan only had 2 requests. First, catch the culprit alive. Second, pay attention to safety. Lastly, he left it to Yi Qian to make the arrangements. Yi Qian naturally wanted the female soldiers to act together, but they did not know if the culprit had any weapons. Moreover, the culprit was heading north, so she did not have much time to think. 3 seconds after Xia Jinyuan signaled for her to speak, Yi Qian said in a deep voice, "Split into 2 groups. 6 people will stay behind to guard the backpacks. Intercept them at the front and confirm if they have any weapons. If they do, Captain Xia and I will be the vanguard. 2 groups of soldiers will surround them and intercept them." Weapons. The excited female soldiers could not help but feel their chests tighten. They were ashamed to say that although they had served for many years, they had never encountered any criminals with guns or ammunition. But who should stay behind to guard the backpacks? There were 3 female soldiers and 3 male soldiers. There was no dispute. The 6 people who stayed behind did not have any reason to object. This place was equivalent to their rear, so there must be someone guarding it. Because it was only a 30-kilometer cross-country mission, Yi Qian and the rest did not bring any personal communication equipment. Each person only had a military locator. Yi Qian, Xia Jinyuan, the squad leader, and the deputy squad leader were each equipped with a walkie-talkie. Yi Qian looked at the deputy squad leader, who was equipped with a walkie-talkie, and reminded her to be careful. If there was anything strange, inform her first. Xia Jinyuan instructed the male soldiers to pay attention to their surroundings. If there was anything strange, protect the female soldiers first. If they could not contact him normally, send 2 people with walkie-talkies to find the main group. Xia Jinyuan also left a deputy squad leader with a walkie-talkie. Yi Qian's arrangement was the most conservative one. There was no other way. Although they had bullets, they were all empty shells. They had no lethality from a distance. Once the other party had guns and ammunition, everyone, including her and Captain Xia, would be in danger. First, she had to ensure the safety of the soldiers. Xia Jinyuan's decision to let go of Yi Qian was the greatest affirmation he could give to Yi Qian, so he naturally had no objections to her arrangement. Confirming whether or not the other party had weapons was the most important thing to ensure the follow-up battle. It was also the first thing that had to be done. If they didn't confirm anything and just led the soldiers to capture the other party, what would the consequences be? No one dared to pay for it. Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan each led their own troops and headed north quickly. They could not delay for too long. The Gobi Desert was too big, so it was easy to hide a few people. They had to figure it out as soon as possible so as to avoid alerting the enemy and allowing them to escape. In the Gobi Desert, dozens of black figures moved quickly and approached the direction of the suspicious people. Their feet were covered with gravel of different sizes. If they were not careful, they would make a sound. As the instructors, Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian naturally rushed to the front. It was also up to them to find out how many people the other party had. They could not determine the number of the other party just by listening to the sound of their footsteps. The 2 of them had worked together for many years and had a tacit understanding that they could not be separated. They first moved forward quickly, then took turns to move forward. Under the faint starlight, the figures moving forward vigorously and fiercely made the soldiers behind them exclaim in admiration. Chapter 49:14. Quick, keep up. Watch the back. The almost inaudible voice reminded the 2 squads of soldiers. The squad leader, Yang Zhen, tightened her waist and followed the path Yi Qian took. She led the team in front and left the rest to the squad leader of the male squad. Every time they worked together, they didn't seem unfamiliar. The desolate mountain range shrouded in starlight was still silent, rising and falling for who knows how many years. The bone-chilling wind blew, rolling up a layer of dust on the ground and blowing it to an unknown place. The Suzhou military division wasn't calm at the moment. The commander, Senior Colonel Nie Hongwei, sat in the confidential room and drank strong tea. From time to time, he stared at the 3 computers on the conference table. He put down the teacup and looked at the map on the big screen. His brows were furrowed, and he was extremely serious. How is it? Is there still no response? Senior Colonel Nie took another sip of tea and turned to ask a technical officer who was operating a computer. No response at all? The technical officer replied, no response at the moment. Senior Colonel Nie's face darkened. There was no response at all. There was no response at all. Were the people in the northwest all asleep? The enemy had snuck into the restricted military area, and none of them had discovered it. He was furious. 2 days ago, the Suzhou Military Division received a temporary order from the Linbei Military District. The military headquarters would send a team into the Gobi Desert in the northwest in a few days to inspect the security of the important areas in the northwest. Senior Colonel Nie received the order and was quite confident in the various regiments and battalions under him. However, at this time, there was no news from the northwest hinterland. His firm confidence began to waver and become unstable. Why is there still no news? They should have discovered it by now. The commander of the military division, Senior Colonel Nie, couldn't even sit still for a minute. He relied on the bitter tea to support himself, and at the same time, he had to suppress the anger in his heart. If the people sent by the military headquarters had snuck into the base and none of his regiments and battalions discovered it, it didn't matter who was the unlucky one. 3:24 in the morning, 10 minutes had passed since Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan discovered the footsteps. The 2 quietly lay on the high ground and stared at the 5 figures in front of them. Yi Qian only looked for a few seconds before she sighed and said in a low voice, Captain Xia, have you contacted the team recently? Ever since he hasn't called back. Xia Jinyuan, with his palms on the cold ground, looked at the 5 figures in front of him who had stopped moving, and a trace of playfulness flashed through his eyes. It's definitely not a good thing for them to sneak here. Since they're all acquaintances, we don't have to show ourselves. Let the soldiers behind us deal with them. It's a good opportunity to practice. Xia Jinyuan's suggestion was strongly supported by Yi Qian, but she had an even better suggestion. Xia Jinyuan squinted his dark eyes, raised his hand, and gently pressed his palm against Yi Qian's forehead. He chuckled and said, "You're even worse than me. Let's see if they can solve it themselves." Yi Qian was grinning from ear to ear. How could he miss such a good opportunity to practice? It all depended on how the soldiers behind him would deal with it and whether they could take the beating. The black figures in the starlight were none other than his comrades from the Snowfield Brigade. 4 days ago, the G3 from the Snowfield Brigade received orders from the military headquarters to lead a team into the Northwest. They would break through the defense lines of the Northwest military restricted zones one by one and find their way to the target. As for the specific reason, G3 and the others only understood why the military had done this after they arrived. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.